Okay. Okay, hello and welcome to Toronto Bible Study. Here we have our guest today, Norman from BC.
Hey,
Norman, do you want to reveal your name and stuff? Is that okay? Or
no, just go with Norman for now.
Cool.
I have been doxxed in the past, so by SJW freaks. So
I know it's so crazy these days, man. Like you got to be very careful. So I totally understand that. That's no problem.
Oh, they went after my they were calling like my ex-wife and stuff, but we're still friends, and they tried to find out where I worked and stuff. It was crazy. But I hit back with them with some holy strength, and they went away.
Nice. Yeah, those people can't keep us down, man. We'll always win in the end,
Yeah.
But okay. So all right, well, let's start out. Norman, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a 34-year-old father of three. I'm currently my wife is it's my second wife. She's from Brazil. I have two kids from my first marriage, and then that didn't really work out. She was young, and it wasn't working. You try your best, but it's a two-person thing, right? And then I have so regrettably there was a divorce, but now I have it's fine now. But now I have a wife from Brazil, and I have a child with her, a daughter who's just in kindergarten now.
Good.
I work in the trades as like an electro finisher.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of reading. So because my job is a lot of it's kind of like baking, right? You put stuff in the oven, you wait for it to finish off, and maybe do some other things, but you have a lot of downtime. So I read a lot about politics and the economy and stuff.
So electro finishing, that's like what you put chrome on stuff and stuff like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
chrome, gold, silver,
okay.
nickel, zinc,
that's
corrosion
cool.
protection. Yeah.
So I could just send you something and you could just chrome plate it for me or something like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Depends on the thing. Like there's different processes for different like surfaces. So if it's plastic, you got to do like a certain process. Like I think you got to dip it in some sort of zincate, and then from there you can plate it. But it's sort of a one-time thing. Metal is easier. You just kind of rip off the old metal and then put on new stuff, right? But it's very it's very, how do you say, meditative, because you're working with these machines that move like 12,000 RPM, and you could get your arm ripped off if you're not paying attention. But I'm like listening to classical music as I'm doing it now. It's like kind of like almost like a movie.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. I hear you. That stuff is cool. It makes you think. And it's also really satisfying, right? It's one of those things. Those videos you see on YouTube, like oddly satisfying.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of those things? Like can you see it when it's getting electroplated, or do you have to put it in the thing? And
it depends. Some baths you can see like they're relatively clear or transparent, but some are like dark and you just put it in and pray to Jesus that it comes out nice. But the polishing is the key part. You got to make it all smooth first with like polishing, with like a lathe and like sanding and stuff. And that's the real key. So like stainless steel you can't really plate, but you can make it look like a mirror on any surface. It takes a lot of you got to be very like articulate with your hands. You got to be very dexterous,
Yeah.
But because if you make one mistake, like you turn it the wrong way and you angle your body the wrong way, it gets thrown on the ground, and then it's just dented, and you got to start from scratch.
Oh man.
Well, start from scratches, we like to say.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right, that's cool. That's so interesting, man. So so you had a marriage. So your other kids are pretty old right now, aren't they?
Yeah, I had my first child when I was 19. She's just turned 15.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And yeah, she's pretty good. She's in high school now, same high school I went to. She's really into art and she's very based, so that's nice.
Nice, cool.
She's much more conservative than I was when I was her age.
Good. Well, you're raising her up right. You raise up a child right, and she'll know the way.
Yeah.
How about
I'm
your
proud
other
of her.
boys?
Then my boy, I have one boy. He's he's 12 and a half. He just turned 12 in September. He's to middle school, and I just got him into rugby. Nice, cool. Which is good. It's a good bonding experience for boys, and it gets them to work on their body, and it makes them kind of more self-confident.
For sure, that type of thing is good.
Yeah, and he likes
They
it,
get
and it's
strong,
like safe. It's safer than football. Like football, you're just smashing into each other. Rugby is more of a gentleman's game. They like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
they like to say soccer is a gentleman's game played by barbarians, and rugby is like a barbarian game played by gentlemen.
Right, right, right. Well, they do have a lot more respect, I find. Yeah, the football stuff gets really, yeah, and the way they smash their heads and they get brain damage and stuff.
Yeah,
It's
I love
weird,
playing
man.
like touch football or flag football. I love quarterbacking. That's like my position. It's just fun, but the
Fun.
smashing thing, it can get pretty brutal, right?
Yeah, it's like it's too much, man. I don't know. There's something wrong with if you have a sport where the people are playing by the official rules and they're getting brain damage. That's not good. You know, there's something wrong there.
Yeah,
And you're getting little kids into it, and all of these kids all over America and all over the world now, like getting into that thing. You know, I don't know.
just getting absolutely hammered. Like
Yeah,
I played field lacrosse before, and it's not as I don't know. I'd say it's rougher than football,
yeah.
because if you're within
Lacrosse
nine
is
feet of
rough.
the ball, yeah, if you're within 9 feet of the ball and it's on the ground, anybody's open game. So you could get side hit. Oh, it's just I got
Right.
side hit one time. Wind absolutely. It felt like my uh chest cavity like squished, and I was just like the
Yeah,
wind
yeah.
was knocked right out of me. That was my
Oh
first
man.
game.
Oh, but you stuck with it though. Good, good for
Oh,
you.
I think we only had 2 seasons at my high school, so then because the coach retired and we had no one else to take it on. But I was basically like graduating that year, so it didn't really matter. I had rugby too, so I was just too busy. But yeah, I liked it. It was rough. Field lacrosse, I couldn't believe how rough it was.
No, it is rough, man. I've seen those guys. Yeah, they get down, man. Some games you wouldn't think they're so rough, but they are. Like lacrosse, and also obviously that one that they play here in Canada, like the one with the natives
Yeah,
where they have these. Is
that's
that
lacrosse.
lacrosse?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
that's
lacrosse.
lacrosse. Okay, okay. So there's another one. I guess. Well, you were talking about field hockey. That's
Field
rough
lacrosse,
too. Yeah.
field lacrosse, and field. There's box lacrosse, which is like inside a hockey arena with no ice.
Oh,
That
okay,
one's kind
okay.
of rough too, but it's like
That's not.
you kind of know what's happening on it. Like it's more like hockey rules versus like barbarian
Just
field
nuts. Yeah,
lacrosse.
just yeah. I know, right? But you know
Yeah,
what? You know what was rougher than I realized? Like water polo.
yeah,
I
you
never
get smacked
realized.
in the face. Yeah,
Yeah, those guys get down. They'll practically drown you in there, man. The way they sit, they play rough, you know.
yeah.
That's
I played that before too.
did you? Yeah,
Yeah, we
you're a
used
good
to have a.
athlete, eh? Yeah.
I was, yeah. I used to. I play ice hockey now. Like I run a
Mm,
hockey team, um,
cool.
just a beer league team, but it's
Yeah.
fun. But
No, that's fun, man. Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, so okay. Well, and then you got one more kid. He's just she's just a baby, or what? How old is
She's 5, so she's just
she?
started
Okay.
kindergarten.
Oh, nice.
And it's been absolutely brutal because like the last two
Oh,
years of
with
her
the
life, it's just been
yeah.
totally upset. Well, she's used to it, but I want it to
Mm,
end. I'm constantly complaining about it. But I
yeah.
don't know. There's not much we can do. Like there's just everyone's kind of brainwashed into thinking like this is all something we need to do, and it's like no, we just got to stop. Like move on
Oh,
with our
it's
lives.
so weird, man. I know. Okay. Well, let's talk about that maybe
Yeah. Well,
because that was one of the
okay.
questions, right? But you want to
Yeah.
go? You want to get down to that later, or you want to just talk
Oh,
about it now?
let's get down to it later because I just was gonna say that because like I'm worried about her future
Uh,
socialization, but like we socialize her quite a bit, but like not seeing people's faces, I think there's got to be an effect, right? Because
yeah, yeah.
that never happened.
The whole thing. Well, all you can do, in my opinion, man, all parents can do is just tell kids that this is not reality and this is not anything they need to be all freaked out. Don't like, I don't know. I don't even know what to tell kids. Like it's so
Yeah,
weird, man. It's
it's
so
it's
weird
weird because
because
basically with kids, you're kind of like your job is to not mess them up as much as
yeah,
possible because like
right.
they whether or not they come out perfect, they kind of come out as perfect as can be.
Mhm.
And your job as a parent is just to like try to keep them as perfect as possible without
Yeah,
because even if you try to do what you think's the right thing and you really go hard on that, that could be like too much, like
right.
you gotta be really balanced. So
Yeah, you gotta
like
let them find their own personality, their own way
yeah,
of doing things. At the same time, you don't want to just give them too much freedom and
yeah, you got to
because you
give them
want
like
to guide them, right?
yeah, you got to give them a
Right.
structure because structures kids have no experience,
Yeah.
so you need to give them a structure, otherwise they're just sort of lost. Like put them in the woods alone without a map. Like, what are they gonna do? Like a baby alone in the woods? They're gonna eaten by wolves. So you gotta like,
Yeah.
you gotta
Yeah.
kind of guide them.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Like that's the thing. I mean, okay, well, we're Christians, right? So we can talk about this like from a Christian perspective. Parenting is much different than we're told in the media or in public education or anything today, you know?
Yeah. Well,
I
yeah.
mean, well, what do you think about like I was watching this thing about dating, like kids and dating. As a Christian, it's a little bit different, right? Or what do you think about that?
I think we were given like what we have, right? A man has a certain set of things and a woman has a certain set of things, and they're supposed to come together to make one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the story of Adam and Eve, right? Like takes his rib from Adam
From the
and makes
woman, yeah.
Eve of it. When they
Or
come
from the man,
together,
yeah.
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 And when they come together, they sort of become a bigger being,
One
like
flesh,
they
right?
become
One
whole,
flesh.
right? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
And through
Absolutely.
that wholeness, you create new beings. Isn't that an amazing thing?
It is.
You know?
It truly is.
And
Our God is an amazing God. You know, He created us like with an amazing mystery.
it's a lot to contemplate.
It is.
I can't remember where we're going on there about though.
Oh, we're
So
just talking about dating and stuff
oh
for
yeah.
kids. Like, yeah.
So
Well,
with
I don't know why I
dating,
went there. Yeah, it's weird. But anyway, just kind
well,
of a weird subject, but yeah.
because like we like this whole thing with materialistic pleasure that like our society has been pushing.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's very short-sighted. Like I wrote
Oh, yeah.
here, I was writing earlier about this, and I thought, well, what's the purpose? Because we sort of have traditionalism and progress, right?
Mhm.
Now, traditionalism is sort of the structure that holds everything together, like the Bible, for example, like the stories in the Bible,
Right.
the sacrifice that Jesus made so that we don't have to go to hell, um,
Right.
uh, creation itself rather than nothingness, right? Because
Yeah.
why make it? It could just have oblivion instead.
Right.
Uh, all of this is like without this traditional structure, there is nothing, right?
Right. Right.
Everything collapses, and you have to the true purpose of progress is to just keep up with the Joneses. Essentially, it's not to
Mhm.
there's no goal with progress. It's to keep us sort of at the same level as our rivals in other areas, so that they don't overcome us, essentially.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah.
But the progressives here have taken this idea, and that's right. You don't want to be going against the guy with the bronze sword when you got a stone sword, right? You want to make sure you kind of have you want to be
Yeah.
equivalent so you don't get destroyed.
Sure.
That's vigilance, right? That's what
Yeah.
progress is supposed to be, is vigilance
Okay.
in the
So
face of reality, right?
you're keeping
But
up. Yeah. So you're not gonna get. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
because you could just get totally owned,
Right.
um or
You don't
enslaved,
want
right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You don't
or
want that. You
enslaved.
gotta keep up. You gotta be competitive. You can't be. You gotta be able to defend yourself and
Yeah. Well,
hold your own and kind of thing.
the meek shall inherit the earth, right? That does not mean the weak do. It means that the guys who have swords and are capable of using them, but only use them when necessary, will inherit the earth because they're going to be
Oh,
alive.
okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Right.
so the progressives here, though, they just like they're like off the leash, They're running around trying to chop the kids' dicks off, and they're like, "Oh, this is good." Like they literally say to like a 5-year-old, "Oh, don't worry, 5-year-old, you're free to set your own destiny." But it's like, "Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
let's play a game, okay? You go first.
Yeah. No, man.
You
I
go
know.
first, Mike."
No,
Then
I
you're like,
don't think
"Well,
so.
what do I do?" No, not that game. Well, let's play a game. Me and you, Mike. We'll play a game right now, okay? We don't have any rules set up, but you go first.
No, it's okay. I'm not trying that one. That's not to be free.
Exactly. There's nothing without any structure, right? So
Yeah.
we just run off into complete chaos. Like we
Yeah.
can't actually make action without some sort of
Right.
structure, and
Right. Right. Right.
that's why we need all that. But progressives,
Yeah.
they just like they think that you can just look into the depths of hell and like come up with something. It doesn't make any sense.
It's weird. Yeah. Like it's like they couldn't possibly be thinking it through logically. It has to be some kind of a sabotage of our society. It seems like, like it's literally like they're sabotaging our society, like they
Well,
come in and
yeah.
sorry. I'm
Well,
talking about progressives, or what do you mean by that? Or
well,
what were
like
you gonna say?
well, you know how like the concept of faith, right?
Hmm.
I think that it's inescapable. And that's one of the things that kind of brought me away from my sort of atheism, is that
Okay.
faith is inescapable. And it doesn't matter whether you're us, Christians,
Mhm.
Muslim, or Buddhist, you got to have some sort of faith.
In
And
something,
with,
right? Yeah.
yeah. Now, progressives also have that. They deny it, but they have
Right.
faith in certain principles, and
Sure.
they're willing to die for them. And I think one of the things that was wrong with our society is that in a lot of cases, Christians like ourselves are
Mhm.
afraid to sort of enunciate that because it's not like quote not scientific, but like that who cares? Science
Yeah.
doesn't tell you what you ought to do. It just tells you. It could tell you like, okay,
Yeah.
I do a science. I measure the temperature outside. It's 20 degrees out. Well,
Yeah.
what ought you do about that, Mike? What ought you
Yeah.
do about
No.
it's 20 degrees? There's
No
unlimited
art. There's no
things.
art there. Yeah. There's only just the details, the facts, right? It's the is,
Yeah,
not the art.
yeah, you can't derive an ought from an is, and
Right.
the
Right.
scientific people, they think you can, or at least
Yeah.
the leftist progressive scientists. Christian scientists
Yeah.
generally don't do that. They separate the two because
Because they
because
just
that's
don't
just
know. They
logical.
know, they understand that God is over morality, not humans. But yeah, once the science that has abandoned God, which is the majority of it now.
Oh yeah,
It's
which I
weird.
think
It's like it becomes inhuman, and just it becomes like this mockery of real science. Now, actually, the science that we have, like the scientific revolution, comes from the Christian.
yeah,
It comes
it's
from Christian Europe. I mean, you can say the Muslims kind of the Muslims did sort of begin with the idea of like experiments and stuff, but it was the Christians who really brought it forward with
was the
Francis
Greeks.
Bacon and Galileo. And well, the Greeks never had that. They never did, like
Yeah, yeah,
they would do like, so Aristotle, for instance. I always talk about Aristotle. Aristotle thought that heavy objects would fall faster than light objects, or they would fall. Yeah, the heavy ones would fall faster, right?
yeah, based on their weight. Yeah,
Based on their weight. And then nobody checked. Nobody checked until Galileo, until Galileo. Imagine it's well over almost 2,000 years, right?
yeah,
And only then did finally somebody actually check. And that's when we knew now. So but it was then, it was Bacon and Galileo. They started doing experiments, the inductive experiments. But
yeah,
the thing about it is like, it's the concept of a one God. The idea of, if there's one God, then there's probably one natural law for the whole universe, and that's what gives you the idea of being able to do an inductive experiment. And then you can induce that principle from the experiment into the whole world.
hmm
Whereas the pagan, they can't see the world like that because there's different gods and there's different rules. We don't know what the rule is over there. You know what I mean? So they never had that logic there in their mind.
Well, I think
What
in
do
a sense, with even I think even pagans, I think maybe they're just sort of struggling to piece together things. Because obviously, when you look in the world, you see different things. Nothing's this like you won't really find one thing that's the same as
Yeah.
another. Like,
No,
but
yeah.
so they've basically what they've done is they've sort of chopped God up into like a lot of different pieces, and then it
Mhm.
creates this chaos. Because like, well, how do you put that back together? It's like Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah, exactly. It's
It's
because
just
they've just been confused, in my opinion. But the pagan mentality is like, it's one, they always have this idea of subjective truth. Even if they'll come to finally admit that there's objective reality, they'll still
Mhm.
say there's subjective moral truth. They'll never admit to an objective morality. Pagans. That in my experience.
Well, the issue with subjective like truth is like, yeah, well, you're a subject, so you see things through your eyes, but that doesn't mean
Mhm.
what you see is the truth,
Is the
right?
truth. That's
It
right.
just it
That's
just
right.
means what you're seeing is maybe what you want to see,
Hmm.
right? Like there's plenty of guys that have like let's say problems in their relationships, and they think it's the other person, like their wife or their girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, like there's plenty of boomers. Like I sometimes think I'm gonna go off on a tangent here. because my parents, they were married and then they got divorced when I was around, or separated when I was 9. They didn't get divorced till years later, just because it's the court systems are so complicated here.
Oh yeah.
But like literally 12 years later, I think. So anyways, I was like well into my adulthood when they finally got divorced.
Oh,
But my point is, imagine you're a 40-year-old woman, right? And you've been with or a 40-year-old guy, and you've been with your partner for 10 something years. And you're like, oh, well, this isn't going so well. Well, and then for some reason you can't communicate. And that's a 2-person problem, usually not a 1-person problem. But sometimes it's one. Some person's really like stagnant and won't talk. It's just really stubborn. But there's got to be something you can do. And when you get married, you're supposed to like try to hold it together as best you can and like try to make it work. But then you're in your 40s and you're like, you know what, screw this, I'm just gonna go find another partner. It's like, no, it's like good luck, you know.
Yeah, I know,
you're 40.
right,
You're competing
40,
with 20-year-olds, 20,
Yeah.
20, not to mention 30-year-olds. Like, you're kind of throwing everything. You've made an investment and then you haven't followed through on it. It's like buying high and selling low. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Like, yeah, it's weird. You know, more and more people are divorcing late. And my aunt did it recently, or not recently, but it's just weird. You see it a lot now, and it's like, because that generation, even though, because okay, it was like before people didn't divorce because of Christianity, right? And it's like there was just there's a taboo, and then that generation, even though people kind of forgot about Christ and stuff, that taboo was still in effect up until just like, you know, recently.
Yeah, almost yesterday.
But then yeah, no, it's like it really hasn't really come off until very recently. But then yeah, so that generation from a little bit older, they still had the taboo, but now they feel like it's okay now, so they're just like they're divorcing, and it's like 60-year-olds are divorcing now, you know?
Yeah,
Stuff like that.
why?
It's weird.
I just don't get
why,
it,
man? What are you doing? But it's because they can't even stand each other anymore. And you know, if they had like a love of God, you know, and they were just like, okay, then it's like you marry somebody with the understanding that this is for God. You know, both of you are servants of God. You're married because you love each other, but it's like you love God too. You're doing, and He has joined you, and you know, it's like it's a different feeling than if you're just marrying because you love somebody, you know? Because if that love feeling isn't as fun as it was once, that might not be as compelling a reason to stay anymore, you know?
Well, in a sense too, like in a very real material sense, it is like to be with one person forever, right? That is in a sense a sacrifice.
Major
right?
sacrifice, yeah.
So if you lost your model, right, of sacrifice for whether the greater good or for whatever, your kids, your family, society as a whole. Really, it's society, because if you start having divorces, now you need twice as many homes, and it just becomes this complete material waste, right?
Yeah, it's a complete mess. Yeah, it's a disaster. It's a complete disaster. I mean, you know, you've been through it, man.
Oh, it was brutal. Like I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemies. I wish all my enemies have a happy marriage with many children, because like unless they're coming to get me, but hopefully that'll soothe them. Well, not those SJWs. I hope they don't have any kids, because they just ruin them anyways. Or maybe they'd rebel. I don't know.
Yeah, nowadays maybe the kids are smartening up now. You know, the younger generation, they're not as naive as we were to fall for all these tricks. Well, or maybe we're warning them or something, or they're smartening up. But what were you saying?
Well, my nephew, he just turned 20, and he's like totally based. Like if you were to use the word, it'd be unbelievably based for his age.
Yeah.
Like he I'm happy about that, but I don't like, my daughter has I think 2 or 3 of her friends have claimed to be non-binary or have started doing trans stuff, and my daughter would never do that, obviously, but it's concerning. And the thing is, like, these kids, like, okay, you're a teenager, so life's still a bit confusing, you know. You went through it, I went through it. It's a little confusing. What's your future going to be like? I sort of like took I kind of vaccinated myself against it because because I had a kid when I was 18.
Yeah.
So life became real for me really
You got
quickly.
real. Yeah. You had to
Yeah,
grow up fast, right? Yeah.
yeah. But these kids, they're like, I never
Dude,
would have ever thought in my life to like cut my genitals off and try to become the opposite sex. It just makes no sense to me.
no,
But
it's insane. It's insane, man.
so I'm thinking these people are brainwashed
Absolutely
into
there.
this, Also,
Like
I
our
just want
school
to say,
system is brainwashing. Yeah, go ahead.
the picture in your background is awesome.
Yeah, that's what you gave me this. That's why I brought
Oh,
it.
oh,
I
nice.
forgot to say, yeah, you gave me this. That's why I was like, yeah, one way, homie. Love it, man. You
It's
forgot
very
it.
based. Yeah,
That's so good. It
yeah.
is, man. It is.
I
But
complimented
yeah,
myself,
no,
I guess.
but
So.
sorry.
I kind of complimented myself, I suppose, by accident
Yeah. You got good taste, man.
there.
But
Thanks.
what was I gonna say? But yeah, no, like yeah, the first of all, our media is brainwashing us to become like that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, totally
The
agree.
media. So if you and since most kids are basically raised by a television nowadays, or they were when I was growing up.
Maybe that's the difference, because like my kids like basically don't watch TV at all. Like maybe watch some movies, but never ever TV. And even the movies, if something woke happens, I'm like, I cringe, and everyone else
Tell them, right?
cringes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
That's
I
the thing.
pointed
So
out.
now, so I think yeah, those things in combination. So yeah, TV's not as big for kids anymore. That's really good.
Yeah,
And parents like you are wising up, so they're telling them. So that's really good.
yeah.
And
Like that
then
when it's like the like a strong female character,
yeah,
she's like really skinny and whatever. And it's
short
like
hair. She
yeah.
has a lesbian haircut, and yeah.
Well,
What is
these might be really feminine, but they like Natalia from the Black Widow, right? She's like,
oh yeah,
but anyways, so she beats up like 15 dudes that are like
yeah.
jacked. Like, no, man, that's
Yeah.
not happening. Like,
It's
I
so
point those
ridiculous.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so dumb, man. And they kept trying to make those more and more. Like they made one with that girl from South Africa, that
Oh,
blonde.
Charlize Theron.
Yeah. They made her into some action hero. It's like, get out of here, man. It's so lame. Like, how is that even? Is that what a strong woman is? Like a woman who can basically do everything that a man does, or that we think a strong man does, like action hero, whatever.
Yeah.
If a woman can do that, now she's strong. Now she's a strong woman. So what are you saying? So a woman who's just like a mother and or whatever, like a real woman is not is they can't be strong. They have to act like men.
The intrinsic point they're making there is that in order to be a strong woman, you have to become a man. Yeah, so they're literally training your kids to be trannies right there.
Absolutely. That's what feminism is too, man. Like they really do want to destroy femininity, They don't respect motherhood. They don't want women to just like stay home and take care of their families or whatever. They want women to go out and get man jobs. Go become a scholar, go become a scientist and all this stuff. Like what? Why?
Oh, it's sad. It's sad, man. Like I don't think there's any greater heroic act than to raise your own children.
Yeah. To be a mother is the greatest thing a woman can do. And even a man, like to be a father is much greater than to be a scholar. I'm sorry. For all the scholars, you guys think you're so great. Your books are useless. 90% of the scholars' books, complete useless garbage, literally could just throw it in the garbage. And it's that's it would do more good for the human race.
Yeah.
If it was just thrown in the garbage. Yeah. And so that's what, and so all these women now, they want to get into that. And you're not going to be as good. They're not as good. Like women are not as good as scholars. They're not as good at any of that stuff. They're just not.
Sports, you see it with the trans athletes now. Like that's coming back, biting them in the ass. Like this guy's like ranked 400th in men's swimming, and then he goes into women's and he's like killing them, like 7-second wins.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, look, you could get 15-year-old boys to go and beat the fastest woman in the world, the fastest woman in marathon or whatever, the fastest in the world. A 15-year-old boy will beat them.
Well, they play. Team USA plays against 15-year-old high school teams, like the women's team,
right. They got dusted. Lose. They got dusted. Yeah, they can't win. They cannot win. So that's the thing. So it's like ludicrous. But even the sports, that's the thing. The sports, people don't get it. The sports thing was part of this whole gender bending thing from the beginning, like the Olympics and all that.
Yeah,
I'm trying to say it's all that. It's this paganism thing, man. People will be like, I'm like, shut up, man. but it's like people don't know what the Olympics is, you know? It's like they literally are having a Greek pagan festival, okay?
Yeah.
And
Actually, yeah.
what happens is, and they're literally, and they do have like orgies, like it's like a sex orgy at the athletes' village every year.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Every time, right? So and
Which
they're
makes
all on
sense kind of because
drugs.
they're super athletic people. They're like,
Yeah.
you
And they're
know,
good
yeah, it's
looking
just,
and so yeah,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course
exactly.
you'd
Yeah.
expect that, but it's the atmosphere that those people create there that allows that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no holds barred, just everything goes.
It's just, yeah, they just let everything go because they don't have any kind of morals. They don't care about Christianity. They don't care about any of those values. It's pagans, literal pagan life, Greek life or whatever.
Well, when I was growing up, and I was going to elementary school and high school, I remember they were like, oh, you know, because you'd see it when you played PE because it was mixed classes in elementary. It was like, okay, well, obviously the guys are just like so much better at almost everything than the women are or the girls are, and
Yeah.
you just see it with your eyes. And
Oh
I
yeah.
see it with my kids. Like my daughter doesn't give a crap about sports. Like she'd rather draw or whatever.
Yeah.
But my son, he's like, oh yeah, you know, right into it. My younger daughter's sort of in between because she's like really because I take her out, I kick the ball around with her, right? Because it's good for her health. But you know, but if she went to sports, I know she just like compared to my son, probably be like a nothing, right? But it's
Oh
about
yeah.
having in that case, it's about health and having fun. But also in high school, they used to say like there was a girls rugby team, and the girls rugby team was always like, oh yeah, we're so good, we're so tough. And I was like, all right, well maybe. And then we did this like sort of intermixed drill
Yeah.
at some point with the boys and girls team. And it's like the girls had no clue what was going on. They weren't organized. They were like,
Yeah. They
it
don't
was like
know. They
herding
don't know.
cats. You know, guys
It's
are like,
ludicrous.
yeah, we'd like flow and stuff. But the women,
Oh yeah.
it made no sense. It was crazy. Oh, and then
It's
swimming too.
insane.
So here's another one. Swimming. I was like literally never trained swimming other
Yeah.
than like I was in like this elementary school team. But basically we just do laps and
Yeah.
never proper training. I didn't even do like the turning the head thing properly.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
basically
Yeah.
just get there, slam my arms on the water and go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so we'd race against so we had these girls on our team that were like been training since they were like 4, and I'd beat them on times like by 5 seconds.
Really.
And it was
Really.
just
Right
with
off the bat. Yeah.
just brute punch in the water, right? Like, you know, I'd
Yeah.
improved my technique a little bit, but it was not professional. I couldn't even like
Yeah.
dive in properly. But despite that, I
Yeah.
just brute force beat them. And
Yeah.
this is a girl that's been training for 10 plus years.
Well, this is the thing. Like, look, you know, it's like sports. Okay, at least officially, we do understand that sports men are better because they do separate the genders. Even though now they're trying to change that, right?
Yeah.
That's always been kind of understood that up until now, it's always been understood that women can't compete with men in sports. But there's this other idea that above the neck, men and women are basically the same, and any job that a man can do which requires this, a woman can do because they're
Yeah.
basically the same.
Yeah.
Now, this is the thing. That is not true.
I know.
That's the thing that people can't deal with. This is the thing, man. And it's almost the same as with sports. Like, it's that bad. Like, this is the thing. You know what? Like, think about this. All the women, like women now almost outnumber, they do outnumber men in university. At the scholar level, probably not, but it's getting there, right?
Yeah.
But women, they don't publish as much. They don't like they don't, you know, they don't get cited as much. They're just like inferior scholars, you know? They are not as good. They don't produce as much stuff.
Yeah.
They don't get as much work done, you know? In medicine, there's a lot of women doctors in medicine, but they take more time off.
They retire younger too.
Yeah, and then because we have this publicly funded system, that's going to lead to shortages, labor shortages in the future, you know?
Yeah, well, where
So
I
it's
am,
not good.
where I am, like 1/3 of people don't have a family doctor, and if you need to get to a clinic, good luck. Like you got to get there at 6 a.m. and you might get in that day.
Wow.
Otherwise, you're
That's
stuck with the
so
emergency.
bad.
Then you go to emergency
Wow.
and you're there for 9 hours.
Yeah. No,
Like,
no.
just an example, we're done back in. This will be a foreshadowing. So back in February 2020, I had strep throat. I wasn't sure what it was because I couldn't get in to see a doctor. So I thought I was gonna die, man. Like my throat was like, it felt like a bunch of sardines were just like, my throat was just a bunch of rotten sardines hanging there,
Ugh,
floating and with like sore, and like I
ugh.
had fluid coming out of my ears. Um,
Wow.
but I eventually got to see a doctor after waiting 6 hours at a clinic. I got the last appointment of the day, but I got it
Mm,
like at 6 a.m. I signed up,
right.
I got there, and I was there. Okay, so anyways, I thought I was gonna die, and then finally they gave me my they tested me and they're like, oh, you have strep throat, so take these antibiotics I gave you. So I took them. I was better within a day. Um, but in a good system, I could just go to the doctor, right?
Yeah, it'd be
Maybe
done in
that
five
day, and
minutes.
yeah, the
Yeah.
first day, yeah, and it would have been way less worse because like I had like I couldn't hear out of one ear because it was so full of fluid. It was clogged.
Yeah.
The other one, I was it was just dripping constantly. I had to carry a rag around with me to
Wow.
take care of it. Just
Yeah.
absolutely nutty. Then obviously then the COVID bullshit happened. So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
this is such a mess, man. I mean, now we can really see it that these doctors are like they're just a bunch of trained monkeys. Like they don't know anything, man. I talk to these
Well,
doctors. I talk to doctors even that I know personally,
yeah.
and because I've been doing now, I've been ever since COVID, I started researching that stuff. And of course, I've always kind of known that medicine is corrupted and by pharmaceutical companies and stuff. You know,
Mhm.
like the way they don't research unpatentable remedies because they won't make money unless they can get a patent, right?
Yeah.
That's obviously corrupt. But now when I look at this now, like COVID and everything, it's like, and I start to talk to doctors about it, they don't know what they're talking about. I can tell. It's just like when sometimes, I mean, I don't know, like I meet professors and stuff that I can clearly see that they don't really know what they're talking about, even though they're like experts and stuff, you know, or
Well,
they
the
make
thing is,
mistakes.
they're usually
Mm.
experts on like such a fine detail
Yeah,
that
yeah,
like
yeah.
when they look when you broaden it out, they're like they're immediately almost the same as the rest of us or
Right,
worse. You
exactly,
know.
exactly. But they think that they're intellectuals and that they need to have an opinion on everything in society, and their
Yeah.
opinion is superior to ours because they're more educated. So although they
Credentialism.
don't know very much, sorry, provincialism.
Credentialism.
Oh,
Yeah.
credential, yeah, totally, man, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But it is provincial, like the way they like they're so like they're almost like I don't know, man. But anyway, so what ends up happening is they're experts on that narrow thing, and they know almost nothing about anything else, but they think they know, and they're more empowered, and their opinions are worth more than ours, and
Yeah.
so
The thing
it's
is,
like
in the end,
that's
they're
the
just
technocracy.
well, in the end,
So
they're
yeah,
just a human being, right? They don't have like more gigabytes in their brain or whatever. They don't have more RAM up there. They're just regular people. It's not, and some
yeah,
people have better brains than others, but like if you take even let's say a person that does a ditch digging job, basically that's all they're capable of. Like they have a capacity in their mind to understand things. Like they're able to pick up the
oh yeah,
shovel, they're able to shove it in the dirt and pick it up.
yeah,
uh so there's a point where like the doctor is equal to that guy, like, at least
yeah,
intellectually, because they can
yeah,
both lift
yeah,
up a shovel. But that doesn't but the doctors but the difference between those two things is not really that much. And if and one doctor's knowledge in comparison to the corpus of that sphere is very low. Like it's maybe it's 1,000 times more than the average person, but there's a billion times more stuff to know.
that's the thing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean they don't really know that much, and then what a lot of it is when their training is like basically memorizing stuff, and
Yeah.
they just memorize stuff for whatever number of years, and then they come out and that's all they know how to do now. Like they don't know how to think about the science behind what they're told, you know. They
Yeah.
know that if these symptoms are displayed, it's probably this or this, and if it's this, then you give them this drug. If it's this, you give them this drug, you know. They're just
Yeah.
drug dealers, basically.
Yeah.
They're glorified drug dealers, and so
Well, they
I don't
should be
know.
troubleshooting more. Like when you work in the trades, like say electrical, a lot of it's
Yeah,
troubleshooting. So you're trying to figure out, well, why is this? There's like a whole methodology to find out like which wire is having the problem and why
yeah,
that light's not working. This one is, so on and so forth.
mhm.
Um, but you actually have to learn troubleshooting, and
Yeah.
there's techniques and
There's a
stuff.
logic to it, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
So tradespeople are actually very well attuned to problem solving because they
yeah,
have to do that all the time. Like
yeah.
let's say I built this office that I'm in. It's a shed in my backyard. It's insulated. My buddy lived in it for like 10 months until he
Nice.
moved back to England. A great guy. Uh,
Mm.
but we had to put the roof on, and the instructions said build the floor and then construct the roof on top of that, and then put it to the side, and then lift it up with like 6 guys. I was like, well, we don't have 6 guys, so and that'd be really heavy, right? The whole roof. So I was like, screw that. So instead, what I did, we built the whole walls and structure, and then we got my buddy to stand in the middle with a ladder, and I put the center beam with like 3 other side kicks on the sides, and then he just held that in place while I like tack nailed it in, and then we built off that structure. It was way easier, you know. If I followed the expert engineer that built this thing, it would have taken all day, and I would have had to get like 4 more volunteers.
You have to get all these other guys. Like what are you talking about, man?
They got stuff to do. Like they don't want to be lifting up a roof. It was literally like 5 minutes or whatever that would have taken, but no. So much for the experts. But over time, I started to figure out that they more and more the experts are just like human beings with flaws, just like the rest of us. And you know, why should they be taken any more seriously?
But you know what happens too, Norman? What were you gonna say?
Oh no, go ahead. I was just blabbering.
I was gonna say, because we were talking about the whole thing of how public schools brainwashing, right?
Yeah.
And of course it does with that whole LGBT thing and all that stuff. But it's also like the way that because they'll look for the high IQ people because they want to use them for their purposes, right?
Yeah.
So they get the high IQs, but then they also screen for compliance, you know? If you're non-compliant, you get rejected.
Yeah.
So all the high IQs that actually make it into professional positions, they're very compliant, very obedient, very not independent thinkers, and they're just, you know.
Yeah,
so we have a whole bunch of like, our whole technocracy is populated by these people that are not independent thinkers, and they're just kind of followers that yes men, really, you know.
Midwits.
Really weird. Yeah. Oh, they're totally midwits, bunch of them. I mean, all these people, like, that's what I'm saying. These professors I meet, like, they're not as smart as me, man. They're just not, you know. But I mean, I'm sure they work hard or whatever. They're more organized than me or whatever. But just having a conversation with them, they're just not as smart as me. You know what? You can tell, right? You know, when people are not as smart as you. It's really weird, man. I don't know.
Well, there's 2 ways. One I find is they talk a lot, but say nothing.
For sure.
That's one way. Another way is they don't talk at all and have nothing to say at all. Those are the 2 ways. So like you kind of, if you're in the middle, it's more like, well, this person's more authentic, which is sort of like a balancing act, I guess, I suppose. They kind of have their moral sort of focus. It's like if you're in a canoe, you don't want to be all on one end. If you're the only guy in it, you know, it's going to be freaking popping right up in the air. Or a kayak, you know, you lean too far one way, you flip over. So
right.
So but that thing about the school you reminded me of, like, you know, there's all these, there's a lot of hope out there to keep this at bay, and I have some experience myself. So despite the fact I live in the most paused city, in the most paused province, in the most paused country in the world, I would say. I don't know, maybe there's worse places, because I'm over on Vancouver Island, right? It's just full of hippies. The hippies actually are the hippies are the least dangerous, I think, of all the SJWs. They're kind of on our side in a lot of ways.
The hippies are still kind of all right.
So think about this, right? All this brainwashing and stuff. At some point, as a joke, I think my son put on like my wife's dress or something as a joke. But he was a little kid, right? He starts dancing around. Everyone was laughing. My daughter and my wife from Brazil and my younger daughter were kind of laughing about it. And I just said, "Hey, go take that off. Stop doing that." Very calmly, not angry, just calm. And then they're like, and all the girls were like, "Oh, why are you being mean? Why are you doing that?" Like, no, this is not what you do. This is not your role. Anyways, so he went and changed. But think about that, man. The whole universe was against trying to turn my son into a homo, right? Or whatever. And all I had to do as a father was say, "Don't do that," and I won.
That's all you have to do. Just be a good father and give the boy some direction.
Well, it's like that whole thing. It's like
that from their parents, you know.
Evil triumphs. Evil only triumphs where good men don't act. So all you have to do is act, and you win. You know.
Yeah. But the problem is you can only act in your own life. The problem is the majority of fathers are not going to make that move, you know? They're going to say, "Oh, that's so progressive. My son's wearing a dress. And even that, it is funny. It is funny, you know? But it's just that because of our current moments that you don't want to even let him do it for even 1 minute, you know? Because
Yeah.
of just the way it is right now. And
Well, imagine this, right? Like, uh, sorry, I lost my thought there. I'll get it back.
Yeah, well, anyway, I mean, look, because okay, we're a bit all over the place here because we were going to talk about like, but it's like it's the way the progressives are taking over society, right? That's the major problem. But to me, that's like a symptom of a bigger problem. But yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, so you have these people that don't father their children properly or parent their children properly, and they become sort of like, say, lunatics, let's say. In any other era, they'd be seen as lunatics because like dressing up as a woman, chopping a dick off, or all this other stuff, right? So they're like the lunatics that are sort of gonna, unfortunately, end up at the bottom of the pile of society.
Yeah.
And the people that raise their children properly will be blessed with like probably large greater progeny, you know, grandchildren that are going to be healthy too,
independent, healthier, and
so you're really going to end up with all these people that are like this. They're kind of screwing their own genetic line if they even care. They're just chucking them to the wolves, like chucking them right in the garbage can.
They don't care because they're not thinking of it like that. They think our society is awful. We have to reimagine it and change it and progress it into something better. We need a society where LGBTQ is respected and as healthy and normal, and people are allowed to just chop their penises off and whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's so bizarre. But like I was saying, this is a symptom of a greater problem, you know. And we can talk about how.
Well, have you ever seen those videos?
Which one?
The trans surgeries?
No, I don't.
Show them to people. Show them to people that you think maybe you could convert, because if they see those, it's horrifying. It's like God. you have to show them that mess that they're supporting, because it's like I have a story here. A friend of mine, he was from. Do you remember? I don't want to give up his name, but Lucy. Remember Lucy?
It rings a bell, but anyway.
No, it was a person from those Facebook groups. Anyways, I met this person in real life. It was an autistic guy, right?
Okay.
And I was with my wife at the time, my Brazilian wife, before I married her, and we were in Vancouver, and we were at some pub, and I was meeting with some friends and stuff. It's been a while. It's been a while since I saw them.
Are you talking about? Wait. Are you talking about? Oh, he's autistic. Is he a brown guy like me?
No. He's like a white guy. It's it always had an anime picture. Wait. I don't want to give the name out, but yeah, you know what I'm talking.
But she's a trans now, right? Is that what you're talking about?
He is he chopped his penis off.
Woman. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember because I was like, when I heard because I was with him, and it was like he was a nice guy. You know, he talked a lot about like the capitals of the world. Like he was kind of, you know, had the autistic obsessions with like random stuff. So but it's cool, right? And so I was buying him some beers because he had no money, and I used to send him food because he was always like starving. So I was like, oh man, I could just chuck a bunch of food on my Amazon and then just send it straight to his house. So he was able to kind of subsidize and survive, right? Because I gave him like maybe the couple extra days of food he needed every month. But anyways, eventually they got themselves together and got a job, and we're fine, and they didn't have to worry about food. So they asked me, oh, thank you for the food, but I'm good. I was like, oh, thank God, because my credit card's almost maxed out. Anyway, so then what happened, those are the kind of blessings in disguise, let's say. But anyways, they started hanging out with their coworkers, and a lot of them were trans people, and they started becoming, because I don't live there, they started becoming his main friends. And then they sort of brainwashed him into becoming this. And so he started taking the hormones. He wasn't even
interested in that? He wasn't even into that before?
Not really, no.
Dude. And then, it's autistic people get victimized with this thing a lot, eh?
I think they're 10 times more likely to go trans.
Is that right?
It's because they're lost, right? They're kind of like, they don't really know.
They're confused. And then these people, and then the thing is, these so-called therapists are like pushing them into this, you know?
Yeah.
And then you get the people like his friend group that he found or whatever, that they're like that. But anyway, carry on.
It's like throwing him in front of a bus. But then, so anyways, he does the hormones. I'm like, dude, I messaged him. I was like, dude, like, don't like do it. Like, think about what you're doing to
I
yourself.
know. I used to tell him too. I used to be like, dude, come on, man, don't do this, you know. But anyway,
Yeah.
now he hates me. He cut me off because of that. Because I used
Oh
to
yeah.
always tell him that. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Same here.
carry on. Oh, he did it. Oh, that's
Yeah.
too.
But he when then he went to Montreal. They flew him all the way to Montreal for the surgery, and they cut his dick off. Anyways, so he did it, right? And he's like, I was like, well, why not just keep your dick? Like, it's just like do the degenerate thing, but don't chop your dick off. Like, at least, bro, don't chop your dick
Yeah.
off, you know?
Don't like that. Yeah, man.
Because you can't,
Wow.
once you go there, you can't go. There's no going back, no matter how much
No
they
going
tell you
back.
can. So
No,
there's
you can't go back.
yeah, he chops it off. He got all mad at me because of that. Anyways, 2 weeks later, he's posting. Oh, he's crying in the shower because it just smells so bad, and he's
Yeah.
retching about it. And he doesn't even dilate, so it's not even there anymore. So he chopped it off for no reason. Now he just like accepts that he's a eunuch.
No.
A
See,
cockless
that's the
eunuch.
thing. That's the thing, man. It's like you're basically throwing these people, yeah, it's under the bus, or throwing them to the wolves. Like,
Yeah.
and these psychologists or whatever, these people who are pushing this thing, like they're taking these vulnerable people and they're just mutilating them, man. And for what? For what, man? For your ideology, for money, or what is it? I don't know, man.
They do
It's
it.
sick.
You know how like mothers hug their children, but eventually let them go,
Yeah.
like out into the world. This is like society is crushing them to death out of love.
Yeah.
It's like it's totally
We
misplaced.
love you, and then just kill them. Just kill them with your love. Yeah,
You
it's
can,
totally so
isn't there like a cartoon character who like, I'm gonna love you and hold you and squeeze you and name you
yeah,
George? Like it reminds me of that, but like they're
it's
actually
like that.
killing
Yeah,
people. But because a
they
lot of
are,
them
man.
commit suicide after they realize, once they get that clarity, they commit
Yeah.
suicide. And luckily with autistic people, usually they don't, because they don't even think about that. But so that's kind of good. But like, because I don't want to see him dead. I want the best for
Oh,
that guy, and
of
it makes me
course, of
feel
course.
so bad, you know.
Yeah, that's so sad, man. Yeah, I forgot about him. Yeah, he cut me off too. Yeah, because I was like, yeah, when he was talking about the operation, I was like, dude, come on, man, don't do it, don't do it. You know?
Yeah. But what can you do? Like, how do you stop? You can't stop him. It's just, you can try to convince him, but like he's already brainwashed. It's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got kids. They're pushing this thing on little kids. They always push their weirdness onto little kids. You know?
Yeah.
The LGBTQ thing.
They want to diddle him, or they're trying to reproduce.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, or it's like, I don't know. Like, again, okay. So again, I think the LGBTQ thing and all that is a symptom of a problem which is greater. The problem which is greater is they're trying to. Okay, someone is trying to subvert Western society and make it into like something which can become communist and become controlled by communism. Yeah. And now you'll have those people like, what's that guy's name? He got interviewed by G. Edward Griffin. Remember that guy, the Russian guy? He was a KGB guy.
Oh,
Bezmenov.
Bezmenov, yeah, Yuri Bezmenov.
Yeah. So with that guy, that whole story, like, oh, the Russians are trying to infiltrate the West and create communism. That whole narrative, right? I don't believe it, but that's like a narrative that they kind of want to be established. And then you have the idea that there's like the Frankfurt School and those kind of thinkers that are bringing kind of Marxist thoughts back into the academy again and making that popular, right? And so, but what's the origin of it? Like, could we blame it on the Jews? Could we blame it on the devil? I would say it's the devil, and he uses Jews for this operation because they certainly do push it. Like Jews are certainly at the forefront of all this progressive stuff,
Well, I think there's different tribes of them. Like some of them are like that, and some of them are like, well, not, let's say. But I think there's like competing factions within that group.
Yeah. No, within the Jews, yeah, of course. Like, okay, so there's Jews like, what's his name? That guy with his sister has
Soros.
Oh, well, there's Soros. Yeah, he's more progressive, right? But it was the guy who's more conservative, but.
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, like those kind of guys, right? There's those kind of Jews, but even them, he's conservative, but he's always going to be like, he's conservative up to the point, and then, tribal. He's always going to like support Israel. They are tribal, and so they're not really conservatives, they're only conservatives to the point where it serves the Jewish interest, and then then on the other side, and now most Jews are more liberal and leftist. And I'm not saying they're out, there's no conspiracy. But if you have this group of people who are like higher IQ than the white, this is a white society, right? And then you got these whites, they look like whites, but they have higher IQs. They think that they're constantly at risk of being genocided. Okay, that's constantly in their mind, right? And they're like a minority here. And so they're always going to promote minority rights, liberalism, and all those things. It's just part of their, of course, that's in their interest to promote that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens? That creates this society that's become subverted. It's become like,
they
don't want to leave unit. They don't want to have a society which is a society of whites that are united as white Christians. You know, they don't want that. They want a society where it's like Christianity is not really considered the leading ideology, and
well, the crazy thing is like
put down. And sorry,
the crazy thing is like it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because as they create this, as this chaos becomes created, there's going to be a lot of conscientious people that are like, wow, I cannot stand this chaos. And even progressive people, some of them are going to be dragged over into the sort of reaction. And then, then you might have a complete opposite thing. And you have like the, not really revenge, but like sort of the reimagining of what it means to be a stable society. And so you'll get this new structure that comes up, and that could end up actually to be the thing that destroys these people. And it's like they did it to themselves in a sense, and if that's the case, right? Like after World War One, a lot of Germans were sort of screwed, so they started selling their businesses, and the people that were buying them were people that were capital heavy, and the capital heavy people were most of them were Jewish. So then that became the excuse then later, or one of the excuses for say
the Holocaust.
Let's say the marginalization that came later, right? So it's almost
see, that story is, or no, sorry, finish your thought, please.
Well, not that I'm saying what happened or what not happened, because there could be legal ramifications. You know what I'm saying?
Because you're anonymous. Don't worry about me. I already denied the Holocaust numerous times on this podcast. You know what I mean?
I think something happened somewhere, but I don't know exactly what happened, because I don't think they did the proper investigation. And probably a bunch of shit was faked.
Man. It's so obvious. It's so obvious what happened. If people look into it, it's obvious what happened. They had
wait, how many cookies? Camps. How many cookies can you bake in time? You know?
Oh man, don't even go there. But here's there was no ovens and no gas chambers, nothing. It's just a bunch of nonsense, man.
Well, have you seen the Holocauster?
The Holocauster? What's that?
They claimed that there was like some train car that you'd put them in, and then it would drive into an oven and tip them in, and then 2 seconds later the next one would come.
Are you serious? People try to say that story?
Yeah, the Holocaust.
There's such ridiculous stories about that thing.
You know the one with the shotgun?
Mm-hmm.
So the Jew would be given the shotgun, and he'd be forced to push it into a hole, which would then bend the shotgun barrel back on him. Yeah, it's like Tom and Jerry shit. Like that makes no sense.
Yeah. That was a story that was in one of those books, right? There's so many books. There's a whole genre of books by Holocaust survivors who that have been debunked, you know, like a whole, like there's so many of them, you know.
Why did so many survive? To write, like,
how could so many survive? Exactly. It's like, it's just ludicrous. And
then, who's that? Remember that guy, the chess player, Bobby Fischer?
Yeah.
But Bobby Fischer was like one of the smartest guys ever to live, and he realized like something ain't right with this story.
He never believed it for 1 minute, but he was Jewish too, right? I think, eh? But he knew for sure. Yeah, he was kind of anti-Semite or whatever. But like, the thing is, I don't know, man. It's weird because you get like they'll call me anti-Semite. The thing is, I love Jews. It's like, or I never met a Jew I didn't like. Every time I meet a Jew, they're cool. I like them. And some of them are really, actually, there are totally stereotyped Jews that, and still I like them. You know, it's weird. But anyway,
yeah. There's people, right? Like they're good. There's good people, and like they're
just like everybody. I don't see a big difference. But the thing is, this culture, I think, is a cultural thing. Which, like, first of all, the fact that they think that they're at risk of being genocided. The fact that they think white Christians tried to genocide them, like the ultimate whites, like the Germans, you know.
Well,
And
it's
then
also didn't didn't that fear cause them to genocide the Slavs, like in Russia, because a lot of them were leading figures in the
oh
Bolshevik.
yeah, wow,
Well,
man.
that's a
Well,
different story,
the
but yeah.
that's a
But
kind of a different story, but you know that whole thing too, man. I mean, the fact that like that's the like we're supposed to focus on the Holocaust to the point where they have it. It's like Holocaustianity, where the Holocaust is the true
yeah, yeah,
evil of the world, right? That is then Hitler is the devil.
yeah.
But you can't even look at how many Christians that these Jewish communists killed in Russia. You can't even talk about that, yeah?
Well, another thing too, like
Sure.
what do we do? So Judea declared war on Germany, I think, before
Mhm.
World War II, like 1930s, and
Yeah,
like, what do we do when Japan and Germany declared war on us in Canada? Well, we put them all in camps,
yeah,
but
exactly.
the thing is, we won, so
That's
we get to write the history. So
right.
they make them the devil, and that's our
That's
founding
it.
myth.
Yeah. The
It's
problem is, you know what
crazy.
happened? Eisenhower, after the war, Eisenhower brought in Hitchcock, Alfred Hitchcock, right? And this other Jewish guy, I forget his name, but these two Hollywood directors, they brought them in strictly to make propaganda, and they brought them to the camps. And that's why, you know, the films you'll often see of those like
Skinny people.
skinny Jews and stuff. That's a lot of that stuff is from Alfred Hitchcock, yeah.
Because they were
And this other
starving
guy,
because the
yeah, they're
railroads.
starving. The supply lines got bombed out, so they didn't have food. They had typhus epidemic, which
Mhm.
that was what the Zyklon B was there to prevent, right? Like the Zyklon B was to fumigate clothes so they wouldn't get lice, so they wouldn't get typhus, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, look, anyway, so the Holocaust
Wooden
thing, yes,
doors, you know.
the wooden doors and all that. It's so bizarre, man. How anybody still believes that? Because they don't. Because people they're scared to look into it because they feel like if you let these thoughts enter your mind, you'll become one of those unhinged conspiracy guys that you see in the movies.
It's the boomer truth regime, right? Like the boomers have this truth regime that like relies on this story being true, because then they're the good
Oh yeah,
guys, right? Um,
yeah, right, yeah, that's true. They
do
need
do
it,
do,
right?
do you know about the boomer truth regime theory?
No, what's that? What's that?
So there's a YouTuber named Academic Agent.
Okay.
He never steps across that line, but he gets really close to it. But he
Okay.
talks about the boomer truth regime and how like that's why our society is all messed up essentially. Like that's why like
Oh,
Christianity is messed up, like, or why we've messed up Christianity, let's say. That's
right.
why we have the Jews in Hollywood issue. That's why we have the Holocaust issue.
Oh, okay.
Just look up a boomer truth regime on Academic Agents, or and type that all in. You'll probably find it.
No,
Um,
I've seen Academic Agent before. I like him,
okay, yeah,
but I've
I haven't
never
met him
seen
in real
that one.
life. I haven't met him in real life, but I've talked to him quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, he's really really
He's an
interesting.
interesting guy. He's an interesting guy
Hey,
for sure.
he's half Persian, half or Welsh.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting itself. Yeah.
yeah. His dad's from Persia, so, or I guess
Mm,
sorry, Iran.
Iran, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, he.
it's crazy. Like the boomers, they were like the first sort of super brainwashed generation, you know,
Mm,
because they were raised by TV.
that's true.
Oh, and have you ever
What are you
watched
gonna think
old boomer
about?
TV?
Yeah,
You ever
sure.
watched old? It's absolute garbage. Like garbage,
I
like you
haven't seen
wouldn't
it in a
believe.
while.
They called it the boob tube for a reason, you know.
Well, I'm thinking of like Leave It to Beaver. What are you thinking of?
Oh no, that's okay. Like those, but if you ever watch the show Beat the Clock?
Mm-mm.
Oh
Never heard
my,
of it.
they get these derpy housewives. No offense, but these derpy 50s housewives that don't know how to pull their pants up, and they get them to try to like do these games. They're super like you look at it and you're like, oh my god, I could totally win, but like they're just like totally like clueless. Very polite, very genteel, but um, embarrassingly incompetent at whatever the task was in the game.
The whole thing of TV and movies has been to basically humiliate white people. Like, look, have you ever think about like Happy Days? You ever see Happy Days? You know that show, right? Happy
The
Days
last
with
thing
the
I saw of that was
Fonz.
Jump the Shark. That's what I saw last.
Oh, because you're younger, right? I always forget you're a bit younger than me, but anyway.
Yeah, I'm from '88, so
Yeah. Anyway, Happy Days is a show where there was this guy, the Fonz. Okay, he's like the
yeah,
cool guy in town. Okay.
Fonzarelli.
And Fonzarelli. And so I guess they're supposed to be Italian, but he's a Jew. Henry Winkler. Okay.
Yeah.
So Henry Winkler is the coolest guy in town. All the girls love him in this white town. Okay.
Yeah.
The star is this white guy, like a classic white guy. Like it was that guy, Richie Cunningham. What's his name?
Oh,
He's a director now, Ron Howard. So
yeah.
classic white guy, right? Red hair. And he was when he was a little kid, he was Opie Taylor on the other show. So he's like a symbol of whiteness. He's a symbol of the classic white young man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And his father is like also kind of like they portray him, you know, they portray him. He's like overweight. He's kind of a dumpy, kind of boring loser guy, you know?
Yeah.
And his wife is kind of dishy, but she thinks Fonzie's like this hot guy, you know, his wife, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and this whole show is all about how these white people think that this Jewish guy is the coolest guy ever. The Jewish guy gets all the girls in town, okay? And that's the show. We watched that for like 10 years and nobody saw what was happening, you know? We didn't know. But it's like, it goes further back than that, man. You should see like
King of Queens, man.
Deep it goes, man. Well, tell me about King of Queens. Tell me about it.
I didn't really watch it, except sometimes it was just on when I was like, I was usually playing like I usually watch the History Channel back before it was like super ridiculous. So like World War II documentaries. Anyways, it helped in my history classes, but not that there's much content. But I used to play like games, so like, you know, World War II games, and my dad would be watching TV on the other side of the room. But I remember there's this show called King of Queens. It had that Kevin,
the fat dude and the
fat dude, and he had like a hot sort of like a
chick,
sort of a hot, compared to him, she was like a hot wife, and he was like this fat loser guy, watches football games and eats nachos, right? And like every show was like that. Like, he was just some loser that was married to some chick that was out of his league that was way smarter than him, and he had a good heart, but he was always messing things up. And every show was like that.
Homer Simpson, and all the people, right? Yeah, absolutely, man. There's that image. They and this is documented. Like even sociologists will talk about this. How the white man, the white father of the sitcom went from Leave It to Beaver's dad, who was quite respectable, right? Quite like a gentleman and slim and in shape. He's handsome, right? And then it just degraded down until King of Queens. He's like a slob, and you know,
there's more too. I can't think of King of Queens is probably the best example.
It's not on. Like, look, you know, it's not on. That's not even like. Look, think about it this way. Look,
Family Guy.
That's
another one.
Or Homer Simpson, but think about this, man. Think about this. Look, it's like they literally. It's like you have another like ethnic group that creates the culture for the dominant ethnic group. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like imagine like, yo, look, Christmas carols.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of Christmas carols, but for some reason, lots of the ones you hear, they don't have anything to do with Christ or Christmas, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Jingle Bells.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Yeah, Jingle Bells. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. All written by Jews. All of them. If you have a Christmas carol that doesn't mention Jesus or Christ or whatever, it's probably written by a Jew. But think about Rudolph. Think about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He's made fun of for his nose. Okay?
Yeah.
He's being made fun of. He's being kept out of the group because of his nose.
But he saves the day.
But then, he saves the day. Not only does he save the day, he has to lead them. We need him to be the leader for them. He has to lead the other stupid reindeer that can't handle it. You understand?
Very subversive.
Like, very, man. This is the thing. And people will say, I hate Jews, or I think there's a conspiracy. I don't. But they do. And it's a cultural thing. Like, because they think that they're like a chosen people. They don't think that they're the same as the dominant group in the society.
Yeah.
So they're just, it's like this fourth column all the time whenever you have them in your society. You know what I mean?
But do you know,
I'm not even hating on them. Like
just pointing out like what appears. I think it's Guantano Mosca. He's like the elite theorists. Do you know about these guys? Like Pareto, So he
Oh yeah, Pareto, yeah.
yeah, well they say something like you can never have a majority that defeats a minority, like in a certain sense. So what he means is there's always an elite group behind things.
Right,
And an elite group of say 100 knights will always defeat a force 10 times the size of it. They're unorganized, because really what
right,
happens when you're fighting 1,000 people that are disorganized, you're fighting one person at a time
right,
or a
right,
couple
right.
people at a time, right?
Yeah,
So so an organized group will always defeat a disorganized group.
right,
So what does the organized group always try to make happen is that they never let the um majority get organized.
right, right.
So you'll
And
see
that's what they
whenever
do.
they do, what do they get
Mhm.
called?
Right, 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 right.
You never see them called Jewish supremacists,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. It's
but
unbelievable, man.
they will slander anybody with that. They'll slander you with that.
Yeah, yeah. They will. They totally will. Well, the white supremacist thing is so played out now, but they still think they get mileage out of it. But
It's
yeah,
it's
Jewish supremacy is crazy. It's crazy, man.
like Seth
Look how
Rogen. Oh
dominant
my
they are.
god.
Oh, Seth Rogen. Look how they act, eh? They made that thing with the it was
The
him and the
elves.
other that Jewish woman. Yeah, what's her name? Sarah
Oh
Silverman.
yeah,
And
yeah.
she was so insulting. You see how she goes, oh, I'm glad we killed Jesus. That's what she was doing, one of her jokes, like that's how they are, they
Well, you
joke
know,
about it.
yeah. Well, if I guess if they in some ways if they didn't do it, then he wouldn't have saved the
Oh yeah,
world,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, I don't blame them. I'm glad, like, well, or I'm not glad, but it's like I don't blame Jews for that either. Of course not. It's ridiculous, but it's like don't
well,
joke about it. You know what I mean? Don't
yeah, yeah.
like don't make fun of it. And that's what they do, man. It's like people don't realize how they
That,
just mock, like.
do you know what's crazy though? I think when they make fun of it, I think it kind of makes us stronger in a sense. So I don't know why, it's just this feeling I have. But whenever they do that, I feel
Oh
pity
yeah.
for
As a
them.
Christian, I do. As a Christian, I do. Yeah. But I feel bad for all the people who get brainwashed. Like, I mean, why do we have such a negative opinion of Christianity? It's because that's what we're taught all our lives in the media and even in public education. And
Yeah.
all these things are kind of dominated by this Jewish culture. Like the whole, like, people don't get it, man. It's like their thought dominates our whole society. Freud, Karl Marx, it's
Freud's
just on and on.
Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays.
Bernays, yeah,
He
it's
wrote,
just on and on and
you
on,
should read
man.
that book if you haven't read Propaganda, you should read it,
Mm,
because
yeah,
then
I
it's all
should.
it's like
I read
lifting the
parts of it.
curtain. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is, man. It is. It's amazing what those guys were doing, man.
I also recommend like reading like all the books that Lenin wrote, anything by
Mm,
Lenin, because you
yeah.
don't have to look at him as a communist. You just look at him as like a revolutionary, because you can
Right,
take his
right.
tactics, right, and then turn them
Mm,
back on them, or at least unless you recognize, like, and this is for other
yeah.
people. I know you probably read this stuff, but you can recognize the tactics out there, and then you're
You'll
like,
see it. Yeah.
yeah, then you have a shield, right? And that's why
Yeah.
the Crusaders, they put like the Crusaders had shields, and what did they put on them?
Lacrosse.
The cross, right? Because that was like extra defense.
Right,
You're not gonna
right, right.
subvert me. I got this freaking cross. Like, you know
Yeah.
that song? A couple of years ago, I was off at work because it was Christmas time or around Christmas, and I like to take time around Christmas, so I'm with my kids when they're off school, so I'm with them all the whole time. And I was like, oh, it would be a good idea, because my wife was working, because I have a job where you get a lot more time off, so um I think I had 2 weeks and she had one. So the week I was just alone with the kids. I was like, oh,
Mm,
let's sing music, like Christmas music, right? It's a
right.
silent night, and I was singing Silent Night, and I couldn't sing it without crying,
Yeah. Wow.
and
It
it's
is a
like,
beautiful song, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, because like it's the song sort of, I can't even remember what the lyrics are at the moment, but just the feeling where it's like the acknowledgement of this person's sacrifice, so that willing sacrifice to save
Yeah.
y'all, right? And that just like, it's even hard to talk about right now without uh breaking up in a sense, you know.
I know, man.
But
Yeah.
the thought that, and then I started thinking like, holy crap, like I've spent most of my life not thinking about that, and now almost nobody does. Like in greater society.
No.
And so there's no like gratefulness,
Yeah.
and there's gratefulness for that, but that also gives you an example of like being grateful for other things. And there's
Yeah,
so many
totally.
people out there that are ungrateful. And but it's weird how that one song I was just like, but when I went to Brazil a couple years ago, they're Catholic over there. They have
Mm.
the whole family, so they got like the grandparents, all the aunts and uncles, the cousins, and they all sit there at some point in the night when it gets around midnight, and they start singing. It's in
Yeah.
Portuguese, but it's like the same. It's the Christian songs, not the
Oh, okay.
Jewy ones. Uh,
Yeah.
but the actual like symbolistic songs,
Mm.
and it's in Portuguese. I don't know what the hell they're singing, but they're all they're all very united, and it brought them all together.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Oh, and you know how you have like that little set of like Mary and Joseph and like the animals
Yeah.
and the barn. What's the manger? What's that
They
called?
call it the Nativity Scene.
Yeah, nativity scene,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that every the grandma, right, would get the Jesus from at the beginning of the night. There's no Jesus in the nativity scene, but then when it's
Okay.
midnight or whatever, they put the Jesus there,
Okay.
and then they
Okay.
get they're like, oh look, the Jesus came, and they get the grandma goes around and makes the kids all kiss the baby Jesus. And it
Okay.
was interesting though, because like that doesn't happen here like ever. I
No,
don't know
no,
anybody that does that.
exactly. No, never, man. You don't have that kind of reverence or those traditions anymore. It's all gone now, man.
But
So
I'm
bizarre.
I think we're. Do you know ever read the book by Oswald Spengler called Decline of the West?
Oh, I've heard of it. No, I never read that. What's up? Tell
I
me.
bought a because it's basically out of print, but I found a copy on Amazon for like $50. So it's 2 volumes, so I got it's this massive book. It's like 6 inches thick.
Wow, you're a serious reader. Eh? I know you're like a fast reader. You just go through books. Eh? Like I know, noticed that
I
about you. But
I just have lots
anyway,
of time, but because my work basically
because
pays
your
me.
job, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, what else am I supposed to do? I might as well read, right?
Might
So
as well, man. It's awesome. That's good for you. I'm glad. But anyway,
but
carry on.
but this book, he basically, long story short, you could read if you could just see this on Wikipedia. Basically, I'll just give you the Wikipedia rundown. But he predicts that society civilization goes in these cycles, right? And he thinks that by 2020 2200, so a century and a half from now,
Mm.
the West will be completely like say not dissolved, but it'll be here, but it'll be kind of like the Middle East, or it'll be kind of like Africa, or like West, maybe India. India like now versus no, whatever India will be in the future. It'll be like kind of degraded. We won't have like a civilizational spirit anymore. It'll be kind of stagnant and reliant
Okay.
on other places to kind of give us technology. And he
Interesting.
thinks that Russia will be the future, like because. And if you think about it, let's say if the climate change people are right, I don't think they are. I think they're fucking wrong.
No,
But,
no, it's ludicrous. This is
yeah, yeah.
propaganda. But anyway, go ahead.
But let's say if they were right, then well, Russia would suddenly have a bunch of awesome warm water ports all over the place. Well,
Yeah,
that's going to
that's
help
true.
them. They'd have
Yeah, oh
access to more
yeah,
resources. Well, that's going to help them.
yeah.
But even without that, I think they're going to be ahead because they have the spirit alive in them. The want to be. They're looking bad, right? It's in the bottom of the ninth inning. They're down by 3 runs, but they got Babe Ruth coming up. Maybe
Yeah, yeah.
Putin's Babe Ruth. I don't know, but maybe he's going to hit a homer and put them ahead. So
Yeah, I wish, man. I
I think,
hope.
but so Oswald Spengler thought that Russia would be the next place. So I'm thinking that's looking pretty accurate right now. Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing about Ukraine? Jack shit.
I know,
Because
yeah.
who cares? I wouldn't die over there. Like I would never advise any of our
Oh
civilization to
no.
go there and hurt themselves. It's
Oh
not my
no.
problem.
No. And
Like
the thing is, well, this is the thing. Like, I mean, they kind of pushed them, but like again, I see everything as a conspiracy. So, and I know you didn't really want to get into conspiracy theories, but just before I don't want to get into the conspiracy theory because I know you're not really into that. But it's like before we move on, we do. I think we should address this elephant in the room, which is the World Economic Forum
yeah.
and Klaus Schwab and the fact that he used to train all these world leaders and they all say build back better. And I think it's pretty obvious that what whether you want to call it a conspiracy theory or not, it's like publicly available information that all these world leaders are following some agenda out of Davos, Switzerland, right? So,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
then
do
you've
you
got
want
all
his
these
ad?
things like the Agenda 2030. Or sorry, what were you gonna say?
Do you want Klaus Schwab's home address?
Yeah, okay. Chat.
I
So this
I
to be in the
I,
chat.
ha- I have it.
You
I'm
put
just
it.
gonna go.
Yeah, yeah. Let's.
I'll say it. I'll
But
say it publicly right here, just so that like
yeah,
it's.
sure. Go ahead. That's it.
Hold on.
What? But
Here it is.
this
So
guy,
it's
man.
so it's a
Yeah.
Sham de Ruth
Mm.
70 1223 Colony, Switzerland. And it's literally like kitty corner to the World Economic Forum's headquarters.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Huh. Interesting. But yeah, could you send that in the chat because I don't even know what you said there. So
Oh sure, yeah, I'll try to get it. Yeah, but go ahead. What were we gonna say?
Yeah, basically like, so that's why even like with things like the Ukraine war, I almost see that as a staged event or as some kind of like propaganda thing. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
really see this. I don't see this as like a bunch of independent countries fighting wars and stuff. It can't be. It can't be. It's not reasonable for us to continue looking at the world or even world history in that way. Now that we see that they have this Klaus Schwab network, and it's just more realistic to see it as, okay, probably we have a situation where there's some kind of like elite families like from the past to like royal families and stuff who are running it, like the royals of Europe and maybe the Japanese royals and some of the Asian royals, yeah.
Mhm.
And they just still run the world, and they're having their own little conflicts. But all the stuff we see about different countries and elections and all that stuff, that's all fake. It's all staged, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not quite. I'm not like as well up on it as like I'm assuming you are. But
that seems like a lot, right? Okay.
Sorry.
That seems like hard to get into if you're not like, yeah. Okay.
Well, I think if I broaden myself out too much, I won't be able to focus on certain areas. So you can only do so much, and I got 3 kids, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah,
I can't do it all. But
you
no,
have too much time, so much time, yeah.
But I agree. There's something ain't right.
Yeah,
and I feel it. Especially the anti-Christian stuff. And you gotta understand, right? Like I was basically raised with Christian ethics. That's why I can recognize when there's something that's just wrong, something evil, like the chopping your dick off thing. That I was never ever convinced that was good.
yeah.
Even the gay stuff, I was like, I don't understand why you'd want to stick a dick in an
Yeah.
asshole. It doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
to me. And
It
sorry to be
never made
crude.
sense to me. Yeah, no, it's totally, it's fine.
I like to be crude
Never
because
made sense
I like
to
to
me.
chuck it right in people's faces so they see
Yeah,
it. They
yeah.
see the ugliness.
Wake them up, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
wake them up. Because if you just always talk about it like, oh, they're in a gay relationship, then they don't get how weird it is. It's not. It's
Well,
not a. Anyway,
and gays
sorry.
hardly ever get in relationships. They like usually they have like
Yeah.
thousands of sex partners. Like compared
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the average guy maybe has like
Obviously,
6 or something.
Yeah, it's obviously disordered behavior, man. You
They're
get
way
a
less.
guy.
They live 20 years less. Like it's not good
Really?
for them.
Yeah, it's
like
bad for their health. It's very bad for their health. There's no way you can say that's healthy. There's
yeah.
no way. It's not good for even just the anus gets damaged by it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just ludicrous.
Well, even the
How could
AIDS
that be
thing.
healthy?
The AIDS thing, they were trying to spread that, make it look like it was everybody's problem, but it really
No,
wasn't.
no,
Like the
it
chances
wasn't.
of getting AIDS from a woman is almost nothing.
No,
Because
yeah, I
it
know. Yeah, it was totally a gay problem. And they try to make it seem like it wasn't. It's so weird, man. And then there's this thing called like they used to call it gay bowel syndrome, but they get major problems in that part of their body, okay?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that thing is not healthy, you know. So, but then now that thing is considered homophobic, so they don't consider that a diagnosis anymore. And maybe it never was really a scientific diagnosis, but it's clearly they have lots of problems with that area of their body, and it's because that's not healthy behavior, you know. That's not what that was made for.
Well, that phrase, you can go back to that phrase, the truth will set you free. Well, lies will enslave you. So in a sense, like that's sort of what's happening when people fall for that stuff. They're being enslaved. Like it's not really like mentally enslaved, but like once you're mentally enslaved, what's the difference?
That's
you're just physically
That's worse.
Yeah, it's worse. Yeah. Because then
if you have
you
a
don't even
chain
know.
on, Yeah, yeah, exactly. If you have a chain on, then you know what's chaining you. But if you have a mental enslavement, as most of us do now,
Yeah,
it's like you'll never break out of it because you think you're free.
yeah.
The people, that's why that's what's his name was talking about that. The guy who wrote Brave New World, what's his name?
Oh,
Hux.
Huxley. Yeah,
Those guys are part of the Freemason Illuminati to me, right? They're like they were aristocrats, and you know his grandfather was like Darwin's bulldog or whatever. But anyway, this guy Huxley, he wrote that there would be a scientific dictatorship because the people could be convinced to love their slavery, and that's what has happened now. The Brave New World. I mean, this is the Brave New World, really. People are just sexually liberated. They're popping pills and
the thing is, I think the one saving grace though I think that we have is that yeah, there are lots of people like this, but they're not the people that are like having kids and building the future. Now there are
yeah,
some, but the ones that are like that are having kids, their kids, unfortunately, if
they're
they
gonna be
don't
weak.
like, they're going to be
Yeah,
weak and they're going to be at the bottom of the pile, serving a start, not to be insulting to Starbucks workers, but literally doing menial labor.
sure,
Um, uh, and then the people that, and eventually they're kind of being bred out of the system in a sense. Eh,
sure, maybe. But the problem is
yeah,
the problem is that if we have a few generations like that, it's gonna severely weaken those societies,
yeah, no,
because
for yeah,
they're
the
also
crash is
under
dangerous.
yeah, and they're also under like they're not producing enough children.
Yeah,
But all this is engineered. They're trying to crash our society, our economy, and our whole society, and then they're gonna rebuild it in their design. So then they'll give us, like, if they crash the U.S. dollar, let's say, right?
yeah.
Then that means almost all currencies on Earth are going to be crashed. So then they'll say, okay, well, we need a new global electronic currency, guys. And then that's the thing that conspiracy theorists have been warning us about for decades.
I've been
That's the
thinking,
next. That's the beast system. But go
I've
ahead.
been thinking, ever since this, the trucker thing and the government froze people's bank accounts and stuff, which I think was like taking the mask right off. Like if you freeze people's bank, like if, just besides the other stuff, but the banking thing is like, oh really?
That's
So the
huge.
government can just totally
Oh, you can
steal.
just do that. Yeah.
You can just do that. Well, now that's not a safe place to put it. So people are
Yeah.
taking all their money out. And that's
Yeah.
where I think they canceled the emergency thing because people were like, people were actually running the banks. Like
Yeah.
Scotiabank put a $2,000 max limit out, so you can't take more than
Yeah.
$2,000 per day. And
That's hilarious.
the
I didn't
first
even know
thought that
that.
went through my head was, okay, well, I'm gonna sell my trailer that I live in because that's all I can afford. It's
Mhm.
still worth about 300,000. So I sell that, move to Brazil, buy a posada, which is like a sort of beachside hotel, sort of like a bed and breakfast, but it's like a
Oh
motel
yeah.
sort of.
Okay. Okay.
Buy one
Posada.
of
Yeah.
those
Okay.
for like 200 grand, and then just
Mhm.
make a living doing that because
Yeah.
it's
Why
right by the
not?
beach. Go
Right
surfing
by the
every
beach,
day,
just chilling. Yeah, you're
making
loving it.
breakfast for people. I'd be loving it, and like not have to deal with all the
Expenses are
stuff here.
low. Yeah.
The expenses
Yeah.
are super low. You're helping the local economy because you're injecting your wealth into it.
Yeah.
And you're English speaker, so you can maybe bring more English tourists there.
Mhm.
Man, it's just great for everybody. And here I'm stuck in this friggin' house. I got to work 9 to
Mhm.
5 for the man. My
Oh
kids are
no.
growing up in some gay school, and
Yeah.
like I constantly have to fight that. And there, they would all be traditional. You'd have like you basically send your kid to Catholic school, right? Like, which is not perfect, but there it's not like here, right? You gotta
Yeah.
know that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at least they respect the kind of difference between men and women there. But although they do have a big transgender culture there too, it's weird, right?
mostly in the degenerate cities, but the small, like I'd be going to a small town. It's
Right. Right.
basically like
Right.
the medieval ages.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool, man. Actually, that's
Yeah.
a real nice life, eh? My friend
Yeah.
moved down to Costa Rica, and he's absolutely loving it down there. They don't have that much of a problem. He's kind of, yeah, in the country, so they don't have that
Yeah.
all the headaches we have with COVID and everything. But he said in the cities it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And in Mexico, from what I hear too, it's like in the cities. Once you get in the cities, it's just horrible. Worse COVID restrictions than Canada.
Yeah.
Everybody masked, and like I don't know. My parents are from Guyana
Yeah.
in South America, which is like a really poor country, but
Oh, Guyana.
It's so bad there. You know the place, right? It's next to Venezuela. Yeah, Brazil borders on it and stuff.
I
Yeah.
think my neighbor is from there.
Okay.
She's from Guyana as well.
She Indian too, like me, or is she like?
She's partially at least. I think she's
Yeah,
mostly
yeah.
brown, so I think she is.
Okay.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
because there's
Guyana.
lots of
Okay.
Indians there. Yeah, there's lots of Indians that after they abolished slavery, the British is a British colony, right?
Yeah.
So after they abolished slavery, they needed some cheap labor, so they brought Indians in as indentured servants. The deal was you come there, you work for like 7 years or something, then you get some land and you can start a farm. So
Yeah.
that's what my ancestors did, and now there's a society there of Indians and blacks and
But didn't Justin do that too? Do you remember Justin?
Justin from yeah, he's from Trinidad. There are people that are like that too. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's cool.
So
No,
anyway,
yeah.
so why was this talking about that though?
Oh, because I think because we're talking about your friend went to Costa
Oh,
Rica.
yeah. So in Guyana, it's like you even go on, like they don't have buses, but they have like these little vans that people drive, and they just privately, and they get little money to drive people around, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you get on one of those and you have to have your vaccine, and the cops will
Uh,
like fine you and stuff,
yeah.
It's nuts, man.
It's
Everyone
terrible.
has to be vaccinated, and it's so bad.
I was also thinking if I didn't go to Brazil, because I would go there because my wife's family's there. But I think otherwise, I'm really interested in El Salvador because they have this idea about the Bitcoin city, and I like
Right.
the idea of totally decentralized banking because
Yeah.
like I think that would change the world. I don't know if they're gonna let it happen, but
Nah,
it's a hope.
I feel like Bitcoin is a trap, like by them. The same people who own the
Could be,
Federal
yeah,
Reserve, they're gonna lure people into these crypto things with, and then all that stuff can be gone just with a flip of a switch.
yeah,
If they have that.
or the sun like blasts off an extra little bit of heat or something like that. I heard maybe that
Yeah,
could
yeah,
screw it
exactly.
as well. But
One EMP and the whole thing is crashed,
yeah.
right? Or whatever.
Like I do have a little bit of crypto just in case. Like I kind of
Sure.
diversify my assets, so I'm like partially
Yeah, that's
crypto.
okay. Yeah, diversify.
Uh,
There's no problem with a little bit, but people
yeah,
that dump everything in there, I would say that's a bad idea. Like,
like mortgage their house.
nah, yeah.
Well,
I
do you know
mean,
what?
maybe short term, but like
Yeah.
they're going to zero, man. I think Bitcoin's gonna hit zero,
Oh yeah.
zero. And
Oh god.
all
I,
those,
I
most of them.
I mostly have shit coins right now because I was like, they're really low. So I was like, well, they're really low. I'll take it. Maybe they'll double, and then I make double my money, and then I'll get out of there. But
Yeah.
yeah.
How's they doing now? How's they doing?
Oh, it's all down right now. It's been down for like 2 months. Like just
Yeah,
I think it
no,
went
I
down
heard, man.
15% yesterday. But like I don't care. I just hold it. I just hold if it goes up. If I lose it all, I don't really care. It's like a couple grand.
Yeah,
I don't really
yeah,
care. But if it goes big, like I'm buying my parents' house out, and
yeah,
I'm moving to Brazil, living in a mansion. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
buying I want to buy a farm down there if I could.
yeah,
I
for
think that's what I'm
sure.
gonna do when I retire. Buy a big site, and then I could have like move family in because it doesn't cost anything to build a house there. It's like if you're in a farm, you pay a company like 20 grand, they build you a house. But pay another
Yeah,
company 20 grand, they make it a mansion. So
right,
you
right.
know, deck it out with like nice tiles and stuff.
Yeah,
I just want like a little a fazenda they call it.
right. Just
Yeah,
have a nice place, right?
yeah,
But I think I don't know, man. Like I see because what they're trying to do, in my opinion, what they're trying to do is basically impoverish us all, so that we have to be basically serfs for them. So
yeah,
how do they do that? Well, part of it's going to be crashing the U.S. dollar, it seems like, and also I think crashing all those. They're going to crash all the like paper assets.
yeah.
The dollar, the stocks and bonds, all the securities, and all those cryptos and everything, right? And what's going to be left? Hard assets. So if you have land, if you have like, especially farmland, if you have
Hmm.
like gold and silver, those things. That's my opinion. My opinion. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
probably true. Probably true. Like real assets, they're real assets. They're called that for a reason.
Yeah, well,
They're the real
I
ones.
agree. Though the hard part here, because where I live, I think the average house price is something like 1.2
Oh, it's
million.
nuts, man. Oh, it's nuts. I know. Well, out there where you live,
Oh,
shit.
I hate it. That's why I'm like,
Absolutely.
I look at Brazil and I'm like, oh wow, I could get like a palatial mansion for like 200 grand in certain
Yeah.
places.
Hey, man, look, if you can invest in some farmland in Brazil before,
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of it
Thousands,
like because
thousands, huh?
I could put like if we got a mortgage, if my wife went and got a mortgage there, and I just made payments, because my dollar goes so much further there than
Yeah.
here. Like $500 a month, I can get like some in 20 years. I have like this mansion paid off, and like
Yeah.
it's so why not
Why not?
move one of her cousins in there for like tell them they just have to do the lawn and they get to live
Just take
there.
care of the place. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Oh, they love it.
Oh, and then I'm
Yeah,
talking
that's a
like
good idea, bro.
not just 3-4 bedrooms. I'm talking like a 8-9 bedroom house, like with a
Wow.
pool and shit. Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Like it's crazy what
Yeah.
you can get there. VivaReal.com, I think, is like their main real estate site. I'm just checking out all the time, like, oh, what can I get?
Yeah. 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 Trust
Yeah.
me, man. Hey. No, because like, yeah, retiring in Canada is not gonna be like what we thought.
Oh, I'm definitely not
Not,
retiring here. I'm definitely going to
it's gonna be
Brazil.
so bad here.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, man.
Oh,
I
I
don't
want
know.
to own some businesses down there because then maybe I can get my kids working there, and maybe my
Uh,
grandkids can grow up in Brazil instead of here. Like it's
mm,
kind of sad, eh? Like our country's so messed that we like. I'm thinking of going to like Brazil.
I know that's really sad. Imagine that. Canada, man. I mean,
Yeah,
this country it is such an amazing country, man. It's so beautiful. And it's just the society that the Canadian people made here was so amazing. Like, but the
yeah.
thing, in a way, maybe it was all a lie the whole time too, because they always told us we're free and we're this and that, but like now when the gloves come off, the gloves come off, and now they're just you can't even leave your home until we say, oh, you
There's
take this
this
vaccine.
Carl Schmidt, the German guy. I think he was a Nazi at some point, anyways. But he got accepted into the academy, I think, in the West at some point. But he said that the way to recognize where power really lies is during an emergency.
That's right.
So any other time it's just everything else is just a lie. If it's just normal times, that's just a
Yeah.
lie. So and then you look here, right? A couple truckers or whatever, however you want to interpret it, honked their horns in a town for like 3 weeks, and suddenly bring the Emergencies Act. Like it makes no
I know.
sense. It's
Well, what do
just
you think
brutal.
about the truckers? Let's talk about the truckers, man. Like, I think that whole thing is controlled opposition at this point.
Well, it definitely could be. I don't know enough, but from like the face forward, like what they're showing you on their face,
Mm.
I support it because I want to get these fucking mandates over with, whatever it is. I want to get them
Of
out of
course,
here
of
because
course,
I
of course.
yeah.
But to me, it's like, you know what the thing to me, man, is like why I think it's a gatekeeping controlled opposition thing is because they're saying to these people like, oh, we want the mandates gone. We want to sit down with Trudeau at a table and get rid of the mandates. It's like, what? How could you? I mean, it's like they're not appreciating what this problem is. We
Yeah.
thought we were lived in a democracy, and then all of a sudden it became a full-on dictatorship where we couldn't even leave our homes unless they gave us permission and stuff.
Yeah.
That's insane, So then to try and now say, oh, well, we're gonna have a protest and we're gonna negotiate with the government. It's like that's like you still think you live in some kind of democracy, but you don't. You clearly don't,
Do you know
What do you
Brian
think?
Peck? Do you know Brian Peckford?
I've heard of that name.
He's
Tell
the
me.
last surviving first minister, so premier, that was involved in the writing of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
he's 79. He lives on the island where I live, like
Oh, cool.
farther up north, but he lives in the retirement community up there. I want to meet him because he's a really cool guy. Like he was there writing, so he knows why they wrote things the way they did, and he also knows that the current court systems misinterpret almost everything.
Yeah.
So like there's
That's such a joke.
so the American First Amendment, right to free speech. Then you got the Second Amendment, right to defend yourself, basically.
Right.
Now the First Amendment the First Amendment in Canada is like the right of freedom of expression. That's technically, according to Brian Peckford, who was there for when it was written, is more extensive than the American version.
Speech? Really?
Yeah, we should have more free speech than the Americans.
Yeah, right.
But
how did they get the hate speech law in? What is
so
that?
they have this thing. Well, they have this thing called
The
section.
reasonable clause. The reasonable.
Yeah, so section 1, right? So reasonable limits. But reasonable limits now, the way Brian Peckford interprets it means, let's say we're literally in a nuclear holocaust, right? Or Canada's borders are at risk of collapsing because of some sort of conspiracy in the center that we can't control otherwise. Canada's literally about to, unless we do this, Canada will be destroyed.
Right.
That's what the reasonable limits imply. But they take
But
those reasonable
they
limits
didn't
and
say
say you
that.
can't.
They didn't say that. That's the thing. That's why they never, because all it says is reasonable. What's reasonable? Whatever they say is reasonable, you know?
Well, or whatever is, yeah, and that's another thing. Carl, not Carl Schmidt. Oh, maybe it's Carl Schmidt. He says, "He who, so he is sovereign who determines the exception."
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
you
right.
see, Trudeau. Oh, you're not allowed to protest, but the natives can go blow up the friggin' pipelines up north. You
That's
know,
right. That's
well,
right.
not all the natives, obviously, but just the crazy ones. So,
Or it's just like when we had the COVID thing, it was like the protesters were getting called all these bad names or whatever, the spreaders, the super spreaders, right?
yeah,
But then
yeah,
as soon as George Floyd happened, it
yeah.
was like protest. Everybody can go and protest. It's okay. Racism is more important than COVID, and you know what I mean?
Well, they say, yeah, protest is okay. The protesters actually reduced COVID unless they're protesting the mandates.
It's so bad. So
Yeah,
bad, man. I can't believe people fall for it. It's not that they fall for it. They don't care about truth. They don't care about any of that stuff. They just want to eat their pizza and look at sports ball games. You know? That's why this has happened. Because people would rather watch sports ball games or dumb Hollywood movies that are just dumbing them down than think about what's going on, you know?
they're not willing to sacrifice,
Yeah. That's
and
it.
that's the thing. And that's the biggest lesson. Like, that's a lesson that should every grown man, at least on their own when they're alone, they should think about that. They should think about like this is like the for I don't know how you interpret it, but I think of like the two people that, or not the two people, maybe there's unlimited numbers, but the spirit that makes Western civilization what it is that one man, one innocent man, was willing to sacrifice himself. And this plays over
Right.
and over again. Like even before Christianity arrived, right? Before the Romans were around, we had Socrates. Now he's not perfect, he's not a perfect guy, but what he was doing was he was seeking out the truth, and then they killed him for it.
Right. Right.
Now, what was Jesus doing? He was
Oh yeah.
seeking out the truth, and they killed him for it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like the truth of the money changers in the temple, the truth of the corruption in the temple, the truth of the corruption of the leaders. He was killed for that, but by willingly taking that risk that he would, knowing he would die, it changed society for the better. It saved people, right? Even Socrates. Without Socrates, you don't get Plato. Without Plato, you don't get Aristotle. And without, then they're not perfect. These are humans.
Yeah.
But it was that set the course of history, right?
Yeah.
Like Christianity suffered even after there was 100 mini Jesuses after Jesus, thousands of them, as they martyred and killed, and eventually they won. Why? Because they sought a higher truth.
That's right. That's right. They were willing to die. I mean, all the disciples were tortured to death, and they didn't care because they did it because they loved him that much, right? And it's weird, man.
You only get one, well, let's say you only get one life that you know about, anyways. The other stuff's up for grabs, and it's what you're willing to do with that one life that kind of decides what you get as a result. Yeah. And if you're not doing the right thing, you just, not only do you live hell, but you get to live it forever.
Yeah, man. Wow.
So I don't know. I kind of think of myself so I play D&D, right, with my buddy from England. It's just basically to keep connection with them. Yeah. Oh, you've seen them?
I've seen it on YouTube, right? Like you guys.
Yeah, we post the episodes or whatever. We missed last week because we rescheduled to a different time, and then everyone slept in except for me and the one guy, so we just chatted for a bit. But my character's a paladin. I don't really know why. I don't really. It's not like I chose it on purpose. It was just kind of serendipitous. But I kind of see myself as a warrior priest. I don't know. Yeah. That's what I think I'm supposed to be. Sure. But that's kind of what a paladin is. So it kind of worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we would have been, maybe, and if the world's had been proper,
If it comes down to it, I'd so let's say if there's if we had actual sides, right? Because right now it's where's the right side? You don't know who's really an ally or who's just trying to like brainwash you or whatever, right? But if there was like a set side, like my team versus or our team versus their team, well, yeah, I'd pick up that sword and do what needed to be done.
Absolutely.
To inherit the earth, let's say.
But the thing is, that's the thing. It's like that's kind of almost like what we want to do. It's the easy way, like to be like that kind of person. But what did he do? He just let them kill him. I'm not saying we should let our enemies kill us, but I mean, that's not the way to beat them, to go out and cut their heads off with a sword. It's like better to somehow, I don't know, like we have to somehow outthink them, you know what I mean? Or outspeak them. And it's the information and persuasion war, you know?
Yeah.
Where we're trying to just like get people's hearts and minds and change people over to another way of thinking. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, one thing I find that really helps is like sometimes I have like ideas swimming in my head and I can't really get them out, but by talking to another guy like you, I kind of it gives me, I don't know, motivates me to get that out to be communicated properly. So like for example, I was thinking today about that question about which one was it, about economics. So I said like when I wrote my notes, I was like, well, obviously I prefer free markets, but then I started thinking, well, not totally free, because then you get this chaotic tranny shit. But then I said, but I believe that in order for society not to degenerate, we need a proper social structure that maintains like traditional values. Because if you don't have the traditional values, it doesn't matter what market you have, everything's just going to be garbage. And then, but also in my model, the only purpose for progress is to keep up with the Joneses, is to like keep in line with outside rivals and forces, so you don't just become crushed by them, because they're competing for resources. And you know, maybe at some point you'll be able to convert them, but if you're dead and your society's dead, you'll never convert them, and then they're lost forever. So progress's only purpose is to keep up with the Joneses. So in that model, traditionalism really becomes the key component. And I think if we could, but the thing is, I don't know what that means necessarily, because it's kind of been torn from us. It's been thrown in the trash already. So we got to go digging through the mounds of garbage and find out where those pieces are and rebuild it.
Well, there's also
sometimes it's just like, ceremony.
Because it's also partly like you got to be careful not to think traditionalism is the source of. I mean, look, that sort of nostalgia, or we don't want to get like nostalgic about.
I don't mean nostalgia, like, you know, I don't mean like that. I mean like basic shit, like
just like those classic morals and virtues that we upheld in the West in the past.
Well, let's say for example, like it's easier to do with questions. Let's say you're married to a woman, you're with her for 20 years, you have a couple kids, and you don't mind each other, you get along, but like the spark's not there anymore, and she's kind of annoying because she gets kind of crabby because she kind of takes you for granted. And then you're out one day and you see this nice young woman, she's very kind and she's very attractive. Do you leave your wife for that woman?
Right, of course not.
Well, no, you don't, because one, you have a wife already. Two, you have this structure, this tradition of your own, of your family. It's been there for 20 years, and there's this new person. Well, that would be progress for you, because you could move on, in a sense, because you could move on, have more kids with this younger woman, because maybe your wife can't have them anymore. Now you have even more kids. Well, then you're going forth and being fruitful, but you're not maintaining your own traditions. So in a sense, you could progress, but you're leaving everything behind. And that could ruin your kids, it could ruin your wife, it could ruin you in a lot of ways nowadays with the divorce courts. So I don't know, it's
but I don't know, you know what, okay, well, you know what, because we're almost like arguing for Christian morals from the perspective of secularists, you know. What we're talking about here is like Christian traditions are just better for society, and if we have a Christian society, it'll be better, you know. But we should instead think of it like this: God is our king, and our king said to do this, you know, and he said it to do it for a reason, because he loves us, and he's God, and he's smarter than us, and he knows, you know. So when he says, don't have sex outside of marriage, it's not because he wants to, you know, he's doing it for our good, you know. He wants us to whatever, like
Yeah. Well,
No.
I the reason why I started coming up with this, because like I had to think of a way to convert just secularists you're never ever going to get fully. There's some that you're just
Yeah.
never going to get.
Yeah, you're never gonna convert them.
Which
Yeah. You just
sucks,
gotta
but
convince. Yeah, no, I no. There's a lot of value in what you're doing there. Like
so
arguing
imagine,
for it from
yeah.
their perspective. But yeah, go ahead.
So imagine this, like you, Mike, you have X amount of knowledge because you have X amount of life and time and experience, right? So you
Right.
can only really like have so many experiences in your one life, because eventually you're gonna time's gonna be up, and God will take you back home. But now imagine 1,000 iterations of Mike over 1,000 years,
Yeah.
and you compress all that knowledge. What does that knowledge become? Well, definitely more close to God than just Mike alone,
Right.
right?
For sure.
So now if you take all of human, so this is how I would talk to the secularists, right? I don't use the God language because that usually turns them off. But then I just go, okay, so imagine you have 20,000 ancestors in a row, and you compress all that knowledge to the most important things. That's your
Right.
God, secularist.
Yeah.
Now
Right.
that God is infinitely more powerful and knowledgeable than you. So you think maybe it knows something you don't?
Yeah.
Or do you think you're more, can you humble yourself before this knowledge?
Right.
Well, that's
Right.
what's that to a secularist? That's no different than God. So I just use that with them. And then pretty soon they work their way into it on their own after that point.
Yeah.
But
Does
once
it
you get
work yet?
I
Because
think
I don't
it's
know. I
so
find the
so
videos.
my English buddy,
Right.
the guy I played
Yeah.
D&D with, I've used that with him. He's a full Christian now, completely. Like
Really? Wow. Are you serious?
he was
Amazing.
more atheist than I was.
Wow, man. Wow, that's so good.
Uh,
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Well, hallelujah.
so
That's good, man.
another good way to do it too is you because one other thing that brought me in this direction was researching my own ancestry, and I was like, because I was just interested where I came from, and it's a lot more complicated than you think. Like at first I was like, oh yeah, it's just like a tree, right? You know, a couple branches or whatever. But it doubles in size every generation. It gets insane.
Right. It gets
Like
very fast, yeah.
it gets so big that at some point within 10 generations there's actually a lot of like interflux, like there's
Overlap, yeah, for sure.
overlap. So like, my parents, like I estimate they're between 6th and 8th cousins, somewhere in there, and
Okay.
that's just a rough estimate
Which
because I
makes
don't know.
sense, which is probably
Yeah.
typical, right? Anyway.
Yeah I think like even me and you are probably between 10 and 15th cousins, I guaranteed,
Really?
somewhere in there.
Wow,
Yeah,
I
something like
wouldn't
that.
doubt it, yeah. That's the thing, yeah. We are our family in the end, yeah. That's
Yeah,
the beauty of Christianity too, but it acknowledges that,
well, it may be 15th cousins, but spiritual brothers. How about that?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Oh, for sure, we're brothers on that level, yeah.
Yeah.
But okay. Well, let's talk about Jesus a little bit. Like, so how did you come to realize about Jesus?
um
You want to talk about that, or is that okay? Or?
I'm just trying to think of what to say. I don't want to say something stupid.
No. I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you my story, and then you
Okay.
can talk. Because this is what happened. I was like researching. Well, you probably saw it in a way, right? In Facebook groups like LDR.
Yeah.
Because I was the conspiracy. I was a regular. No, I was the agorist because I didn't trust the government.
Yeah.
That's why I went to agorism. And then I was like, okay, well, the government's a fraud, so that means our education system is fraud. So I started researching those education things, and that was when I was questioning like evolution and stuff. And that's when I questioned evolution, and I came to realize evolution is probably not a very good theory, and that's when I realized it must be the Bible. Yeah,
It's at least much too rough. It's sort of
evolution?
like, I think it's too much. It's too rough of a theory.
Yeah, it's you know what it is, man. Like, look, this is the thing. I mean, you would never explain something like that. Like, it's not an explanation. It's like I don't know, man. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but
Yeah.
nothing that they try to do makes any sense. Like, they don't. It's an explanation with a million holes in it, and you're just supposed to ignore all of those holes. There's no abiogenesis. There's no problem of consciousness, or there's this thing of the body morphology problem or whatever, the Cambrian explosion. Endless problems with this theory. Okay, but it's all supposed to be, we're all supposed to just go, oh, it's okay. It's a fact. Even though it has a million problems, it's a fact. And if you question it, you're an anti-science Christian bigot. You know?
I hate that anti-science thing, because that's, to me, that's basically
God,
telling me I'm
so
not a Christian. You know, it's the same thing, because the science came from that.
I know,
Oh,
exactly.
sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I found something I wrote a while ago. If you're interested, I could, about the Christ. You want to hear it?
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's hear
So I
it.
wrote, in regards to the Jesus Christ, I wrote, not all can model themselves after him, but if we can be brave enough, we should. And we should at least be willing to see and understand when those modeling or trying to be like him do it as such, do so as it is such a sacrifice. So we should have sort of a respect or admiration for people that are willing to put themselves in that position. They're so willingly sacrifice and suffer and die so that others may live, to perhaps overcome suffering and glory in perpetuity, to confront evil itself and have it tempt you, and to be the supreme being who not only denies the material wealth manifest, but cast such upon the rocks of despair and cruelty, to rise above it, to rise to it, to gaze upon it as if it were nothing, and embrace everlasting, ever-loving being. It's funny, you know, when I think about these things and I take time to write it, like, because I wrote this before, like prior, like a while ago, and then I look back at it, I'm like, it just kind of, it's as if I'm not writing.
Yeah, it's
You know,
it's like an interesting thing that you can read now and appreciate. Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, like at the time of writing it, it's like as if it's like I'm not writing it myself. It's like as if something's possessing me and writing it, like the Holy Spirit or something. It's really weird, man.
Yeah, I know. Hey, you know what? I was talking to my other friend about this, because we always talk about like how, because I mean, again, back to the conspiracy theories, because me and this guy, he's a philosopher, okay? And
Yeah.
so he agrees that there's some kind of a conspiracy or satanic or demonic thing controlling our planet. It's so evil, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't believe in Christ exactly. He'll chalk it up to something like the archons or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But like, what we were saying is that man, I totally forgot now. What something you said made me brought it to mind. But what were you talking about just now? It was like that. Okay, you wrote that thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's as if like a hand not my own is writing it.
Oh yeah. So then what we were saying is like, okay, because back in the day they used to think, because I think that these Freemasons are like contacting spirits, and that's how they get. And the artists, I mean, they do it for different purposes, but the artists, when the artists do it, they actually get inspiration. You know what I mean? A demon comes in and inhabits them and writes their music, like the Robert Johnsons and the Bob Dylans, you know, who they literally talk about how they made a deal with the devil and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's that. But now in the ancient world, they used to talk about the muses or whomever, you know, like the Greeks literally thought if you were a poet or a musician, it was because one of the gods came and inspired you. Okay.
Yeah.
Now today, what is the source of inspiration? What if it is spirits and stuff, you know? And then when you write for God, when you write a song for God, maybe it is the Holy Spirit that's inspiring some of them or some of those songs, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, I think I had this after reading Oswald Spengler, I started really just like thinking and rolling around thoughts in my head, because I spent a lot of time at work just reading or thinking, which is good. I think it's kind of like meditating, but not really. But what was I gonna say? Okay, so I thought I was thinking about music. You know, it's kind of like not quite like how you did it, just a different sense. I was like, well, the first, like if you think about classical music, right? It's very complicated, very complex. It's almost like how can anybody write that?
Yeah,
like
I know.
you have like hundreds of instruments. The guys that write it know all of them. They get it all. They sometimes they have lyrics.
Unbelievable.
But all these guys, I think, were inspired Christianity or Jesus or whatever. What they're religiously inspired, and then I
Pretty
started
high.
thinking, well, music nowadays, like you just said, it's inspired by something else. Now, what that means to me is like the music nowadays is like derivative of
Yeah.
the past,
Of
but it
that
doesn't
higher
have that.
inspiration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from a higher, so it's down
Yeah.
lower. So then you
Yeah,
get
it's
this
a much
crap
lower
music.
source. Yeah, you get this garbage. It's like it's basically degrading you spiritually.
Yeah.
But I would say even the classical. So, for example, like so let's say Bach, right? You got a lot of music that's dedicated to God in his sort of canon or whatever they call it. I don't know, his repertoire. I don't know what they call it. You know, the
Yeah.
his discography or whatever. It's like he's got a lot of it's dedicated to God. You know.
Yeah.
But you take somebody like Mozart, who was a Freemason, you know, or Beethoven was a Freemason, you know, and it's not quite as much, right? They don't dedicate it to God as much, you know. It's more about their own beauty and or their own appreciation of their own talent or whatever, you know. And so,
Yeah.
what am I saying this? Or Wagner, you know, now he's going straight into paganism now, you know. And then by the time now when we get to our era, it's just complete, like, you know, we went from like Robert Johnson literally said that he sold his soul to the devil, and then you got Elvis. We were talking with my friend. Elvis was criticized for gyrating his hips too much. It was considered risque. And then 15 years later, you have Black Sabbath, and they're literally doing a satanic ritual on stage, and the whole crowd's going here, yo, hail Satan, hail Satan. You know what I mean? So that's in 15 years that happened, you know.
Yeah.
And now we have full on, like, of course there's full on open Satan worship on stage. That's like nothing now. And now you've got guys that are like, they're literally bragging about murdering people, and you know, or how they're pimps and stuff, right? Like, and then you got little kids. I mean, I was like basically a child listening to that stuff and glorifying it and thinking it's so cool. And then I became a criminal, you know. When I actually grew up, I was a criminal for a reasonable period of my life, you know what I mean? It's pretty sad, like how that stuff twists kids' minds, you know. And like, I don't know,
because it becomes their frame.
Yeah, that's the lens you sort of see the world through. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I thought about this, like, because after reading Oswald Spengler, because he estimates that the world will, or the West will collapse by 2200. I'm thinking maybe even before that. Before 2200, he said it'd be gone. Like, it would be degenerated so bad that it'll move. Civilization's flame will have moved on to Russia at that point, or maybe maybe Brazil, possibly Africa, but he doesn't think so because it's so like disorganized. Like, it just doesn't have the capacity. And the terrain's bad. So I was thinking, what would the peak of Western civilization have been if the end's 2200? So I thought, well, okay, but now also I've learned a lot about the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire, and they sort of had there was sort of two phases. So there was a golden age under the kingdom, and I guess that was earlier. But then there was a golden age under the Republic, and then it crashed, and then it was sort of a golden age under the Empire. So there's sort of like, I guess, three phases. Different iterations.
Sure.
Okay. But each time the civilization sort of passed the flame on to the next thing. And then after the Romans fell, it passed on to the Germans. And then so the Germanic peoples of Europe, they took over, and then passed on to England, and then to the Americas, right? Well, it kind of, but then the Americas kind of brought it back, and it kind of became Western Europe and the Americas together sort of are the same.
Yeah. Or the Anglosphere, maybe you could say.
Yeah.
So I was thinking Western Europe. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, go on.
So I was thinking, when would then I thought this song is called The Blue Danube by Johann Strauss II. And that was first live performed in 1867. Okay. So then I'm thinking, now if you listen to that song, it's about it's a very nice song. It's very complex. It has a lot of changes in it. And it's about this river in Europe. That's very significant, right? Like, it brings all their wealth essentially in these areas. So I thought, okay, well, that river has nothing to do with Christianity. It's just a river.
It doesn't. Yeah.
But a lot of music before that did. And this is one of, but still, this is a really good song. It's a really good song, but it's almost nihilistic if you think about it.
Right.
So I think that the peak of Western civilization was 1867, and we've been in a free fall ever since. Not necessarily technologically wise, because you get like a genius once in a while that creates something and it adds to the world. But I think the peak was 1867. And in the 1950s, there was a slight renewal in like Canada, the United States, because the rest of the world had been completely bombed out industrially. So that boomers got this like huge influx of wealth. So the boomers became the wealthiest generation in history.
Right.
But that wasn't to last, because we're still on a downward trajectory. Because even the Roman Empire, it didn't go down straight. It was like it kind of went down in steps, and then eventually the Germans took over. So if that's the case, then we got to get the hell to Russia or to Brazil.
But again, I see that as like he just didn't see it. He doesn't see the whole Klaus Schwab thing with and Agenda 2030 and all this stuff. That's what's happening, man. It's not gonna be 2200 when everything collapses. It's gonna be by 2030. Yeah. Yeah,
maybe. I'm not sure. But...
and this whole place is gonna be a total different world in just 10 years.
That's why I want to get the hell.
Recognize it. Yeah.
That's why I want to get out of here. I want to go to Brazil because it's just I can have a nice life and have like my grandkids grow up normal. And I think
so. Hope so. I don't think you might be a little bit too optimistic about that, though.
I totally am.
This is a world empire, right? Yeah, I know. You're just like holding out hope, right? And it's true. You're probably better off there than here, but
Bolsonaro, right? Yeah. This is literally where I hinge my whether I go or not. If he wins in 2022, so he has an election coming up this year. If he wins, and there's a revolt, I might go down there to fight for him. It's like because I need some adventure in my life, man. I need to kill some communists. Just kidding. But
like it's like those guys, like like Orwell joined the Spanish the anarchists or whatever. That's awesome, man. Do
you know Peter? You know Peter Kemp?
Yeah, the guy who used to be what was it?
Peter Kemp was this British soldier that fought on the Francoist side on the Spanish Civil War.
Oh, okay.
And he has this book. It's called Mine Were of Troubles, or Mine Were of Trouble. And it's I own it. I got it on Amazon. It was like $10 or whatever. It's a really good book, but it's about his adventure. He has a bunch of books. Mine Were of Trouble. It's like a weird way of phrasing it in English, I guess. But
Mine Were of Trouble. Oh, okay, interesting.
And it's his story about him going to the Spanish Civil War, and he's fighting these international brigades, and so he's fighting the Orwell guys.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not Orwell himself because he was in a different brigade in Barcelona, but he was involved. And I remember one of the interesting stories was he was they were sort of in an entrenched position, and the international brigades were coming up, but the international brigades didn't realize that it was like entrenched, so they're coming up the hill real slow, and then they're like, oh, we're getting attacked, and they were way outnumbered. The international brigades were like had way more guys than the Francoists at this point, and they're like do or die, because the international brigades, they don't take no prisoners, they just kill you. And this guy's British. Anyways, they have his rifle, and he's shooting at the guys, and there's this Catholic priest that's on his side, like on the Francoist side, and he's there like doing the last rites and praying for people or whatever. But he's getting involved now. He's like, yeah, shoot that guy, shoot him, don't let him get away, shoot him. And as they're running back, right? But he didn't know he was shooting at the British and Canadians at the time. He decided he was shooting at the enemy, right?
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting story. He gets injured at the end, and he talks about that. He ends up fighting in like World War II as well as a paratrooper. Just a crazy life, this guy, but really interesting.
I like to check that out because I like to see the other side from Orwell, because I feel like Orwell is
because you read Homage to Catalonia, right?
Yeah, I read part of it. I didn't read the whole thing. I got bored, man. I was like
it's really fucking boring. I read it when I was like in grade 9, and I was forcing myself to read. I was like slapping because I wasn't allowed. I had to go to bed at 9, but I'd stay up like with a flashlight and read. And I'd like be slapping myself awake just to get through it.
Yeah, like what? How is that book so boring? You'd think it would be so exciting. Like
it's the most boring book. I think because he wanted to make.
Oh, sorry. Oh, when he
And
writes the novels, it's really good. But anyway, what were you saying?
I think because it was like a real because he went into such detail about all the stuff that doesn't like you're not really interested in,
Yeah.
like the amount of cigarettes he gets per week and all this other stuff, all his rations. I think it's just boring because it actually is. It probably was boring for him.
It probably was. The experience is boring. Like, you know, you think it's a romantic thing. Oh, we're gonna go fight a war, and it turns out to be just like a bunch of hard work and boringness. Yeah.
And what most wars you're sitting around most of the time
Yeah.
until the action. It's like 95% nothing and then 5%
Then yeah, just,
suicidal death.
everyone's done. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
it's like back to boring and dead.
Yeah.
And yeah. That's how it is, man. Yeah.
Go pick up your buddy's arm and try to get it reattached, like just everyday stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is, man. I'm gonna check this guy out for sure, Peter Camp.
Yeah, and there's another one. It's by I think it's called Always with Honor, the book. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was Wrangel, governor, General Wrangel of the White Army, the Russian army,
Okay.
fighting the Bolsheviks. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
one too. I recommend.
I'll check that out. Yeah, the White Army. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
My great grandfather, he was shipped over to Siberia to fight. Well, not to fight. He was a sapper, so he's an engineer. Who's from Scotland, but he was living in Canada. So he joined the Canadian Siberian expedition, and they went over to Japan, and then went over to Vladivostok, and they made a little base inside of the theater there, the Mariinsky Theater, for the Canadians. And then he would help repair the railway because the communists were just like blowing it up to like stop movement of troops and supplies to the west.
Yeah.
And they were trying to transport the Tsarist gold to England because the king was his cousin.
Uh-oh.
So the communists wouldn't get it, and the communists couldn't use it to as leverage. So anyways, my great grandfather, he got paid, his wage was like at the time $240 for 10 months, so $24 a month. And then but his bonus pay, right, was $365. So he took that money, he bought a house in downtown Vancouver on Seymour Street, which is like, that'd be like $3 million or something now.
Yeah,
something crazy, right? But he bought $365. There you go. Here's my house. And his first wife was a Mexican woman, and he had 2 kids with her. And then he left. He divorced her, and then left to Saskatchewan. Married my great grandmother, who was like 19. He was in his 30s. Had 3 kids with her, and then it was during the Depression, and her family kept trying to move in to the house, and he was like, I don't want anything to do with this. So he left again. I left my great grandmother with 3 kids, the a-hole, and then went to Calgary and had married an Irish immigrant woman and had 2 kids with her. So he had 7 kids, and probably another one that we're not quite sure about, but they think might have been not his kid. But when he did the genetic test, he like has the same level of share DNA with his kids have the same DNA share as with my known full second cousin. So I'm thinking maybe he was actually his kid, but he just wasn't recognized. But yeah, it's crazy, man. Like what people do. That's just one story. I have another great grandfather who was a Swedish sailor who met my great grandmother. He was in his like 30s or 40s, and he met my great grandmother who was 17. And got her pregnant, and then her family wouldn't let him marry her because he was an immigrant and didn't have any money. Well, he didn't have any. He had a job, but he didn't have any like wealth. Right. So she wasn't allowed to marry him. So my grandfather was raised by his grandparents after he was age 6, because I think my great grandmother married a man, and back then it was kind of taboo to have a kid before marriage. So
wow, dude.
But I didn't know that. It was a rumor that my great grandfather on that side was a Swedish sailor. But then when I matched with some Swedish guy who's my second cousin, and I matched with him, and they live in like the east side of southern Sweden. Okay. And they had a picture of him, because I had a picture of him as well, but it was a different year. And I looked at him like, oh, exactly the same. And the crazy thing is he looks exactly like me. He looks a little bit like me, but he looks like exact copy of like as if you blended my other 2 brothers together, it would look like him. So I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, Gottfried Jonsson, that was his name.
Seriously. So you did. So you know quite a bit about your ancestry. That's cool, man.
Oh, and on that same so that was my mother's father side, and his mother, so the 17-year-old, she descended from a guy named well, her father grew up in the South in North Carolina, and his grandfather owned slaves or something like that, and like a lot of slaves, like the equivalent today would be something like $2.5 million worth of slaves. And he sold them 6 months before the war ended, the Civil War, in New Orleans, and he got a bunch of gold and he buried it on his farm in Arkansas. And I know where that farm is.
Whoa.
And he buried the gold there, and but then he went to jail after the war because they put people in jail. But his wife was there. But when he got out of jail, his wife was dead. So then, but he was old and he forgot where he buried it. Apparently, maybe he's just saying that. Maybe he's just saying that so the government wouldn't take it. But it's probably still there in Arkansas.
Wow, dude.
And I looked up the valuation of the farm. It's about 120 grand. So if I could put my money together,
just buy it, go down there,
get the slave gold.
Yeah, get that gold, man. Find that. You know? But there's no, you can't even use like a metal detector on that, right? So
it's a huge farm. It's like acres and acres. So like I don't even know where.
It's almost impossible to find it. Yeah.
And you gotta think that. And that farm at the time, before it became a farm, it was a nitrite mine. So he had slaves digging nitrite for the Southern Army.
Oh, okay, really?
It's kind of messed up, but
yeah.
I tell that to some SJWs, and they get all freaked out. They're like, "Oh man, you own slaves?" I'm like, "No, I had nothing to do with it. Like, I'm a grandson.
He's my ancestor.
Yeah, I'm a grandson of a bastard. Like, they didn't have any slaves."
Nah, I mean, you know what? Look, back then, I don't know. It's like, imagine you grew up on a farm, like your dad was a slave owner, and then you grow up, and then your dad dies, and you inherit all his slaves, and his plantation, and then now you're just buying and selling slaves. Are those people bad people or something? I don't think they are. You know?
I think it's how you treat them. I think in that case it's just how you treat them, because a lot of the slaves they freed, they ended up just becoming indentured or just becoming servants for people like that anyways, because they had no other skills.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do, and they didn't even dislike their masters that much because their masters were kind of kind to them. So there were
bad ones, but there were also really good ones as well, like that gave them more opportunity than they would have if they were free.
Like they would have. I mean, look, this is the thing. I mean, it's really presented as if they were all just these cruel, sadistic rapists, right? Like in Hollywood movies, right? But if you really look at it, especially the rape thing, it's really exaggerated, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of those slaves, they weren't really treated that badly either. I mean, I don't support slavery, obviously, especially the way they're kidnapped from Africa, but
yeah, that was kind of messed. Yeah.
I mean, the fact is, like, blacks in America are more educated. They're like wealthier. They live longer than blacks in Africa. So,
I think in the overall, I mean, obviously, like their ancestors suffered and stuff, but I think in the overall, I think they'd rather be here than there.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, they can't. I mean, look, whatever happened, that's unfortunate. It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
It's so sad, but it's like, now you're here. Now you're a people. They are their own people now. The American blacks, or the West Indians blacks, right? And it's like they're their own people. They're not Africans. There's a new culture, a new race, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and they're there for a reason. It's not they're not just
It's good, actually. Yeah.
Some plan was had for them.
Yeah, for sure.
But that goes back to the whole sacrifice thing. Like, there was sacrifice, but now there's kind of glory.
There's some beauty out of it. Yeah, there's always something good comes out of it. You know, like it's not that bad. I mean, they did suffer, but they're now their descendants have a better life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've traced my ancestry back about. That's one of my hobbies. I've done quite a bit of this. The furthest I've gone back is 300 AD.
Oh wow!
To a guy named. Well, I traced it back to so my grandma on my dad's side, her grandmother on her dad's side was a Cole, so Cole, Cole. Okay. And I was able to trace her back to like some of the founding fathers of the United States.
Wow.
And also they were in the nobility in southern England.
Okay.
And through them, I was able to trace to the name changes like form, like it's Cole, Cowles, Cools, and then Coles, like all different kinds. But you can trace
Okay.
it and you can find the family. And
Yeah.
I traced it back to Alfred the Great.
Wow.
Uh,
Really? Oh,
Alfred Alfred the Great's my 35th great grandfather. So if you say great
whoa.
35 times, grandfather.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm also another one. I think my 32nd great grandfather is Ord Ordgar, and he was an ealdorman in southern England. So he's sort of like a duke or a
Okay.
earl, and he
Uh,
his daughter married Edward the Confessor or something like that, and his son was
oh,
Ethelred the Unready. So my ancestor was the uncle and grandfather of Ethelred the Unready.
I thought the already is sorry, not
He was the
familiar with
guy that I
that.
think lost his kingdom to Canute at some point.
Oh, okay. King
Um,
Canute, yeah.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
Alfred was the guy that he's like, man, the Vikings keep invading. I'm gonna write the Bible in Anglo-Saxon and get everyone to be Christian, read the Bible, and then we'll beat them. And then they did, so kind of worked. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but it's interesting. And then if you go back further, if you keep tracing back along Alfred's line, you eventually get to this Frithgar, who was a Scandinavian chieftain,
Okay,
and that's the
okay.
earliest I can get. You can go back further, but then you're kind of in the mythology. Like he
Yeah.
claims his grandfather was Odin and stuff like that. So it's like, well, what should
Yeah,
do? That's real. But then in that case,
yeah.
Odin's not a god; he's just a guy that some
Yeah,
people
that's
claim to be
true.
a god, right? So
Hmm.
that's interesting.
Maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's what
is
I'm thinking. I'm
interesting.
thinking all these gods in the pagan tradition were just like people that just like they had nothing else to worship, so they worship ancestors, and then eventually they
Oh,
built up to be a god, right? Like, how do you know?
yeah,
It's like 10,000 years ago. It was a god guy.
sure.
Come on, he built everything.
Sure. Yeah, but oh yeah, yeah. That's how they do. A lot of it was that. But I think, I mean, a lot of it is like my opinion. It's like, well, it's kind of like the Bible will say when they sacrifice to when the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils,
Yeah, yeah,
So and it makes you think like there's all these similarities between these other pagan religions. Like they worship invisible spirit beings. They often have pantheons. They'll have like stuff like human sacrifice and stuff, or child sacrifice is a very common motif. It's like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
very strange that this thing all over the world.
yeah.
So why would it be like, why would a human come to think that killing their own child is gonna somehow like bring them a better crop? To me, that's like the devil. That's the devil working in their brains.
It
This
seems like
this
the opposite. Like sacrifice. I think well, the thing is, like a lot of these ancient cultures, they would do things symbolistically.
Mhm.
So, but the symbolism of sacrificing, say, yourself for the greater good or whatever, like in a battle or defending your family from a criminal or something like that, that's one thing. But like killing the next generation seems very
Yeah,
degenerative,
it's
right?
so weird. Yeah, it's almost
So
the opposite, because you're trying to increase fertility with your crop or whatever, and you're gonna decrease your own human fertility in order to increase
yeah,
the food fertility. It's just bizarre.
doesn't really add up.
Yeah,
But but I was reading. There's this guy. What's his name? Joseph Campbell. Do you know him?
yeah,
He wrote this book
yeah, yeah.
called, I
This
think, A
the
Hero with a
hero
Thousand
of a thousand
Faces.
faces. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
for
think
sure. I
I
read
can't
that.
remember if that was that book. He has another one. I can't remember if it's that one or the other one.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about the hero with this one book he wrote, he talks about the Aborigines in Australia, and I was
Okay.
like, I always thought like, okay, well, you look at them and they're kind of like they don't look very sophisticated, let's say, right?
Yeah.
But they're like very ancient people. Like they're
Yeah.
40,000 years separated from the rest of humanity, basically.
Right.
Outside of other than Papua New Guinea and Australia, they're like 40,000 years separated from everybody else. So
Right.
they have a lot of these ancient traditions they did that were like really ancient that probably other people used to do like a long time ago, like
Right.
40,000 years of all, at least allegedly, right?
Yeah.
So, but they have these weird traditions where they would circumcise. So a kid would hit puberty and they'd circumcise the kid. But there's a
Okay.
ceremony that went with it. So the kid would run to the aunties, and great grandmothers, and whatever that were there. So they'd run
Yeah.
to the women for protection. But
Okay.
then but the men would come at them and be like, the great snake calls forth for your foreskin. He can smell you. And then he's like, the women are like, no, leave him alone. But eventually they relent, and he goes with the guys and becomes a man. They cut his foreskin off with a flint knife.
Yeah.
And he's encouraged not to scream out, right?
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, then they praise him, like, oh, good job, Billy, or whatever, not Billy, but they give him a high fives. But then there's these other tribes though that have a second ceremony when they reach the age of where he could get married, I think 16, and they subcise his urethra, so they kind of slice underneath the penis, where the urethra is on the bottom, I guess. I don't know a lot about anatomy, but anyways, they slice it, so now it looks like then they let it heal, and it looks like a sort of a vagina. I don't know how to explain that. It's weird. A vulva. It looks like a vulva, because it's a flint knife, right? So it's not like a clean cut, so it's all messed up. Anyways, but this is another ceremony thing they do, and the symbolism is not about like the fact they're mutilating themselves, because they can still pee and they can still have kids or whatever, but the symbolism is it's sort of a weird way of the sort of the Adam and Eve and the rib. So it's basically they're uniting, because now he's ready to become one with woman. He's now he has to symbolize that by having the woman representation on his male body, which is, you call it the male womb, they call it.
Wow, really?
And the weird thing is, it's not about tranny stuff, because the trannies will take that and be like, oh look, it's just trans stuff, they're trans. But no, it was the same but different story as the Adam and Eve story. But it's like, instead of a rib and whatever, the story, it's like this weird different way. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, and now it looks very brutal and barbaric, but it's actually very sophisticated. But I wouldn't do it.
I was like, what? Are you kidding me? That's so bizarre. But I can see. I know people do stuff like that, but like, wow.
But it gave me a new respect for like the that area, because I thought they were just whatever, right? Like they had no idea what's going on or whatever. But they have a lot of different ceremonies. So another thing they do is they would kill their kids a lot, because like they have no resources. So that because they just be they don't have any protection,
they don't have food to eat.
So they can't
feed them and stuff, right?
So if they had a baby that they couldn't really keep, they just like leave him in the desert, or they'd fill his mouth with sand and they'd die. Absolutely brutal, right? But the kids that they did keep, they treated very well. But their population growth rate was like, so I think you need 2.0 or 2.1 kids per woman to keep your population stable, because some die. But with them, I think it was something like whatever the closest to 2.00000 that you can have for civilization to even exist. So they had no growth for like 40,000 years, and a lot of it was because they're wandering through the desert and they have no food, and their child mortality rate was high because they killed themselves. But the kids they did keep, they treated very well, like better than most Western people treat their kids, which was interesting, because it's like you killed 14 of their brothers and sisters, but you're going to keep this guy and treat him well. Jesus.
It's like the Romans. The Romans used to leave babies in the garbage dump. Well, the Greeks used to leave them outside, and then the Romans took it up, but then they went to the garbage dump because they were living in the city all the time, right? And so but the Christians used to go and save those babies. And eventually, of course, when Christianity became the public religion, all those practices became unacceptable, right? But it's just interesting how before Christ, like how people didn't really value children, human sacrifice, the child sacrifice thing was big all over too. And even the Romans, who were probably the most civilized at the time, who had finally eliminated human sacrifice, they would still leave a baby in the garbage like that,
Well, even in France in the 1700s and 1600s, I think, and if you're a king and you had a kid and he died before he was 5, he wasn't buried with royal honors. He was just buried, just a small ceremony. But I thought it was interesting that you had to reach the age of 5, because like I think at some point, at least in industrial England, I think 75% of kids died before the age of 5.
Wow.
So a lot of times you wouldn't even name them. Because like they might not be alive next week, so you'd wait like a year till you give him a name. He'd be baby. You call him baby for a week, for a year. It's nutty.
Because they don't want to get too close. They don't want to bond with him, and then he dies.
Well, you could imagine, right? Like I couldn't imagine if one of my kids died. I'd just be, I even know if I could go on. Like it'd just be that distressing, you know. I mean, I would because I have other kids, and you gotta do what you gotta do. But it's like that'd be heart wrenching, you know. And to have it happen like multiple times in a life, ugh. And then even yourself, you're like one of 4 that survived or something, you know, out of the 10.
Right. Yeah, I know, it's true. Imagine that, man. Wow.
That's something we should all be grateful for, that kids don't just die randomly for no reason nowadays.
Oh, I know. So good.
Yeah.
I know. We're very lucky now. But then now they're literally poisoning
Chopping
kids. Or giving them this vaccine and stuff. Like, come on, man.
Oh,
like, I don't understand. The vaccine for the kids is just too far, man. Oh, let's get into COVID. Okay, so we talked about stuff.
War is deception.
Mhm.
So I consider myself in a war right now.
Yeah.
So
we are in a war. It's a war by the elites against the world. There's the world population.
And I have no tools to fight the war except deception. So I'm doing what I can to survive. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
I just don't want to give away anything that could be if someone hears it and then thinks me back. But but otherwise, COVID's a fucking bullshit. And I think we should execute all the politicians that push this stuff, especially after, because I had it, because I had COVID. I had I had it, and it was like, I had strep throat in the March of 2020, and then I think I had COVID like last month, and it sucked. I mean, it's like having a cold, but like it wasn't worth everything we've gone through. 100%. And it's like
cold. It's a cold, man. I mean, look, I don't even believe in COVID. Like, I don't know if we talked about this, but
well, I think you said you didn't believe it, but which is fine. I'm fine with people with you saying I don't really, but I at least from what I didn't even I couldn't get tested because they didn't have tests. I was like, hey, let's test this. But the thing is, I had this weird anyway, whatever it was, I had this weird sickness where I'd be cold, and then I'd be fine for like no reason. And then I'd have like a headache on the top of my head, and then I'd have sweats at night, and then I'd be freaking cold, or I'd be really hot and then be cold. It happened for about 3 days where it was kind of bad. But after all I took the entire time, I took 3 Tylenols, regular Tylenols, just to like deal with the headache, because like you'd move your eyes and it would hurt. And then I have asthma, so I took 2 puffs for my asthma medicine total, and that was it, because I had a lot of phlegm. But was that COVID? Was it the flu? Was it something else? I don't know.
It could be anything.
I was just sick, and like I felt better after a couple of days. I have a little bit of a cough still, but like when I get the flu, I get a little bit of a cough afterwards. So, But now that I had it, I'm like, fuck, I should just go find someone with it, lick all the doorknobs, get everyone sick, so we can get this over with.
We can get over with, right? I know, right? But they won't even. They'll just say, "Oh, natural immunity is not enough. You still need a vaccine." But I don't know. People are kind of snapping out of it now.
Yeah. Well, hey, Mike, I don't want to cut short because I have a lot more to talk about, but I have this scheduled thing I got to do. And I gotta get some snack in me because I haven't eaten. I like fast in the morning till around noon. It's been good for my health. I've lost a lot of weight, and I do feel hungry, but is what it is. But do you want to?
You gotta go.
I'm not working evenings next week, but if you want to chat another time, I'd be down. I just gotta like figure out a time that works for you.
For sure, man. Yeah, hit me up. We'll do it. No, anytime, bro. Anytime. Okay. Yeah, we got more to talk about for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd like to go more into it, but I have this other thing that I had scheduled, and I don't want to be. I got to eat, so because otherwise I'm going to be right off my game.
That's fine, man. No, that's totally fine. No, but thanks a lot, man. Actually, it's been a great talk.
Yeah, we should chat more.
Yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't. We can even live stream it on YouTube if you want.
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah.
I got a channel, Liquid Swan.
That's right. You got Liquid Swan up, right? Nice.
I got D&D stuff if you're interested in that.
What do they call that? With the collabs.
Collabs.
Yeah, dog. All right, wicked. So.
But so I'm on the West Coast, so like my time zone's a little different than yours. Right. I'm guessing you're in Toronto area, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's 3 hours difference. Okay. So you're at like 3:30 right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm at noon 30. I got a thing for 1. So but I'm next week I'm off during the evenings. So I should be going forward unless this Ukraine stuff goes crazy. then I might be doing
No.
evening work again. If I am, that's good. I can chat with you in the middle of the day for you instead of at the end.
Okay.
But yeah, I
Whatever. Yeah.
could probably do something after like. Are you good at like 9 p.m. your time? I don't want to keep you up late, but
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
yeah,
Don't
yeah,
worry.
we'll
Just
figure something out.
Facebook me. But
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
we'll get something. But
yeah.
yeah,
I'll
thanks for
Facebook
so
you.
much for coming on, bro. And all right. So oh wait. You know what? I'm gonna close out the show. And so
Okay,
okay.
nice chatting with you on
Thanks
the
for
show.
watching Toronto
Oh.
Bible Study, and we'll see you next time. And this has been our guest Norman from BC. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye.